final guest that is the only person below White Holiday in the Comicsgate phone book. It's my favorite failed clone of Peter Sammetti. The YouTube how you doing, Conrad? Welcome to the show.
Hello. Welcome to Wise Guys Entertainment. This is your host, Wyman. Finally figured out what the heck was going on, or at least kind of. So, turns out, part of the reason why I suddenly appeared to have lost the ability to share tabs is because I was using Firefox. So, now that I'm back on Chrome, all of a sudden the feature's there. So it has something to do with the way they have it programmed for each browser, I guess. Maybe they don't have as much Firefox support as they do Chrome support. So I have less functionality in Firefox streaming. I mean, it does fine for if what you're sharing is a separate application, but not so much if it's in the same tab. And since I upgraded from 4 gigs of RAM to 32 gigs of RAM, Chrome, even though it's so resource hungry, isn't making anywhere near the impact it once did. Pardon the sniffling. I think my allergy pill is wearing off. It's supposed to be good for 24 hours, but oh well. So that means I can resume doing streams like this where I continue the Star Wars on trial. Let's check it out. Oh, shoot. I had it muted. Whoops.
This mouse pack is the best I've ever used.
Introducing the Mouse Xmas.
That Kermit the Frog.
All rise.
He's all smiles.
You may be seated.
Tigger.
Mr. Ng, thank you for coming into court today.
It is an honor, Your Honor.
Okay. I just want to say you've done a phenomenal job cleaning up the charges. Great work, Mr. Ng. You may, by the end of this trial, have earned yourself a Red Lobster gift card from me. And if you're like me, what's the best thing to get at Red Lobster? The bread.
Oh.
If anyone who's been to Red Lobster knows, the bread there is probably the best thing. Before we start the trial and get things started, I will have instructions for the prosecution and the defense.
Bread is good.
But let's get things going. Where is our show opener? I don't see it in here. What is the label there, Mr. Brown? Mr. Brown in the background. Our producer, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown. What is the label?
Where is that, sir? What is the title?
Come on, Mr. Brown.
Okay.
Go with the program.
I don't see it here. Glenn, can you point me to the title of the show opener? And thank you, jury, for your attendance and your patience as we work out technical issues here for the show.
I believe Mr. Brown is trying to communicate with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, look on the screen.
I can't.
Yeah, I can't read that.
I can't read it.
Oh,
It says uploading. Okay.
okay.
Let's get that uploaded. We'll get things started in just a moment. I do want to mention that last night I was watching a television show. Excuse me, not a television show. Excuse me. I hardly watch television anymore. I was watching a YouTube show called the Whatever Podcast. And a young woman on that show dressed in red accidentally bared her top. And I just want to make it very clear to everyone watching this show and everyone here in court,
better not do that.
you will absolutely keep your shirts on during the show. There was a top had fallen off of this woman. And in particular, I want to make note of it for you, Mr. Ng, because I have seen videos of you where your top is revealed. That is not acceptable in my courtroom.
I may need 10 minutes to secure my shirt.
I think your shirt looks fine. What I'm saying is, could you please keep your top on in my courtroom? This is not the Whatever Podcast. We will be professional here. There will be no doing of altered substances, at least until after the show, after court is over. And you will keep your shirt on in a formal setting. Mr. Brown, is it uploaded?
It's almost.
Okay.
Why they ever even took a moment to
He's currently watching the wheel
mention
spin.
Red Lobster and gift cards.
Yeah, let's make sure that we're well prepped before the show so that we are without delay.
Judge Gore's background is starting to.
And now
deteriorate.
court is in session.
Very good intro. This one's good too. Providing the support. Not forgetting Helen Taylor. Trez versus Lucasfilm and Disney for the murder of the Star Wars franchise.
Mr. Ng, court is now in session. A personal aside, how do you feel about the bread at Red Lobster?
I've not been to Red Lobster in, I'd say, 20 years. So
Okay.
I remember it being decent.
Okay,
Sorry, it's great. I love Red Lobster.
let's take a look at the charges. This is
Oh,
the document. There is a link in the description of this episode of Critics Court. We will specifically be focused on charge number 1, count number 1. That is all we're dealing with today. Let us scroll down to count number 1. Mr. Ng, would you please read count number 1? That will be the subject of our debate today the proceedings in court?
Yes, Your Honor. Count number 1. The film threat jury, in the name and on behalf of the citizens of the fandom of Star Wars, charges and accuses Lucasfilm/Disney with the offense of fraudulent misrepresentation on or about the 30th day of October 2012. Lucasfilm/Disney did unethically and fraudulently misrepresent their plans for the Star Wars franchise as a whole. Lucasfilm/Disney also knowingly set expectations that the original trilogy cast, defined as Han, Luke, and Leia, would reunite in The Force Awakens. The failure to reunite the legacy characters during the event in the Disney Star Wars sequel trilogy and the disrespectful demise of the original trilogy cast showed blatant disregard and disrespect for the Star Wars franchise and the fandom.
Let's see how it works. Hey, Garrett, this is
Gee.
Steve with Rapid Radio.
Yeah, you do.
Got you loud,
Left your ads.
Do you understand these charges?
Yes, but I'm not the one being prosecuted.
Let's bring on the members of the prosecution to introduce themselves. Starting with Mr. Bring on the members of the prosecution to introduce themselves. Starting with Mr. Bring on the members of the
I think you're,
prosecution to introduce themselves.
Yeah, Christian, you're creating
Starting
a
with Mr. Bring on the members of the prosecution to introduce themselves. All right, let's make sure mute that button there. The members of the All right, Christian, I'll bring you on in a moment while you figure that. Just as in any courtroom, there are technical errors that are embarrassing at times. Wait, that needs to be corrected. I appreciate the patience of people in the jury here. Thank you. Let's bring on first member of the prosecution here.
Anna.
Her name is that Star Wars girl, member of the prosecution. Ms. Girl, please introduce yourselves.
Ms. Girl.
Yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna, but I'm known online as that Star Wars girl. You can refer to me as Anna in this trial.
Okay, Ms. Anna.
Like
Mr. Toto, have you worked out your audio issues?
Sounds like
I'm
it.
surprised she's not wearing a collar.
Mr. Toto?
She's still got the.
I believe so. If you can hear me now, I am Christian Toto. I am the editor of HollywoodandToto.com.
Right. Let's bring on other members here of the defense.
Oh, the defense are going to be showing up.
Starting with, how would you like to be referred to as? Dave?
Father Dave is fine.
Father Dave.
Yes.
Welcome to court, Father Dave.
My name is Father Dave. I'm an Orthodox priest, and I run an RPG blog called Blood of Procopius.
Mr. Korn, welcome to the courtroom. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Thomas Korn, and I host a radio show on K100 Out North Radio Theater, and I am working for the defense.
Sounds like he's in
you're a little low in the audio. You might want to check that you've selected the correct mic.
It is. Can you hear me now?
It's still a little low. Dr. Gordo, welcome.
Thank you, Justice. My name is Dr. Gordo. You can call me Dr. Gordo, and eventually the doctor will kind of fade away as you get comfortable saying Gordo. And I'm here to represent the defense for Disney and nothing more.
Okay. All right, Doctor. There is some debate now about the correct spelling of the word defense. Would the chat please decide, is it defense with an S or a C? We will answer that question.
Yeah.
Finally, we have Mr. Willie. I'm not going to say Monkey King. That sounds ridiculous in my courtroom.
I'll fix it. I'll fix it in a sec.
Okay. Mr. Willie, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Willie. Not the Monkey King. I'm a animator, and that's about it. But I'm here for the defense.
Okay. And we also have Mr. Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood here will be providing, he is our courtroom sketch artist. He will be providing sketches illustrating the proceedings in this courtroom. And Mr. Blackwood has an Instagram he would like you to follow. So courtroom sketches by Mr. Todd Blackwood can be found at Blackwood_PDX. Follow him on Instagram for more drawings from today's courtroom proceedings. Here's how things are going to work as we get started here. The prosecution will present their case first. It will last approximately 30 to 40 minutes. The prosecution will present evidence in the form of exhibits through shared Google Docs. Mr. Ng, as special counsel, you will be sharing those documents. So say if Ms. Girl asks for Exhibit A, you will display Exhibit A. Understood?
Understood, Your Honor.
Same for the defense. The defense will have 30 to 40 minutes to present their case. Any exhibits that are requested, we will display those exhibits for all to see. And you have 30 to 40 minutes to make your case. In between each of those, we will talk to the jury. We will get their questions, comments, and chat remarks. In addition, at the very end, we will have open debate between the parties. We will keep it civil, no name calling. I would like you to stick to the evidence. Argue this case. The people watching, the nearly 1,000 people that are currently watching right now live on YouTube, you are the jury. You will decide ultimately if Lucasfilm Disney is guilty of murder of the Star Wars franchise. Any questions from any party? Does everyone understand and is everyone prepared? All right, I'm seeing a lot of nods. Seeing a lot of nods. Okay, and also I will note that we will have a sorry, a question, Mr. Toto? No? Okay, good. We will have a recess in the middle to take care of personal business.
I'm all good, Your Honor.
It'll be a short recess. Okay. For the prosecution, who would like to go first?
I think I would like to go first.
Ms. Girl?
I said you may call me Anna. Now, I was having trouble getting all of this uploaded onto Google Docs. They are all JPEGs. So would it be all right if I shared my screen?
Yes. Is it possible for you to share the screen here?
Yeah, let me get this.
I don't know if you have access to this. Okay, there you go. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, Ms. Anna, please continue.
All right, so I'll have you share my screen in a moment. But first, I would like to bring up the first exhibit for evidence, which is this book written by Bob Iger, The Ride of a Lifetime. Now, for those that do not know, Bob Iger is the CEO of Disney and was responsible for the acquisition of Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm, and then later Fox. Now, this book is titled The Ride of a Lifetime. It really should have been titled Lux Luthor's Guide to How to Manipulate and Take Over the Entertainment Industry, because that is exactly what this book is. Yeah. And every count, I know we are only covering the first count, but every count that is provided by the court.
Why do I use Navan? No one asked you.
No one asked you.
It makes managing business travel spend.
To charge Lucasfilm, Disney, is all proved in this book. So all you have to do is get this book. It's available hardcover, ebook, and on Audible. So you don't even have to read it. You can listen to it. What I'm going to be showing you in my exhibits are excerpts from this book. Everything is direct from Bob Iger himself, and there's references in the back of the book if you would like to see where all the other information was from. Now, this states that it was around 2012 when Disney started destroying Star Wars. It actually took place a lot longer before, almost a decade before, back in the early 2000s. Now, if you could please share my screen, it is important that we go through a little history deal or to understand how this happened to Star Wars. So one thing you're going to hear me talk about a lot is a thing called the Pixar deal. Now, for those of you that are not aware, Pixar was actually a branch of Lucasfilm. It was the Lucasfilm Computer Graphics Group that helped make special effects for all of these Star Wars movies. Once George was done making the original trilogy, he didn't exactly need that section of the company, which was, partially, if you guys do not know who John Lasseter is, he's one of the men that was responsible for starting Pixar. He was one of the heads of the graphics group, and they left and they were bought by Steve Jobs, who is also a good friend of George Lucas, and Bob Iger, which will come into play very prominently in this exhibit I'm going to be showing all of you. And so the Pixar deal was that Steve Jobs acquired the graphics group from George Lucas. They created Pixar to do all animation. It was first for commercials, but then they were able to negotiate a deal with Disney to do live action films, which, because they were still a startup, Disney had the upper hand in that. But then slowly, Pixar started to gain some speed, and they had success after success after success. Now, this is where we come up with Bob Iger. Now, right before Bob Iger was about to take over as CEO of Disney from Eisner, he went to Hong Kong Disney, and he was still not as aware of the animation side of things and how bad they were claiming to have doing at this time. They had lost roughly $400 million in their animation department over the decade when Bob Iger, when he started working at Disney, to his takeover. Because even if I might disagree with him that the films, I personally think that they were good, but I guess they weren't resonating with people like they wanted to. So when he was at the opening of Hong Kong Disney, he was at the parade, and he noticed all of the characters there were either legacy Disney characters or Pixar characters. And like it says right here highlighted, if you guys can see it on the screen, let me know. And if you guys can't, I can zoom into certain slides just to give you guys a little bit more visibility. But it says right here highlighted, Disney was founded on creativity and innovative storytelling and great animation, and very little of our recent films lived up to our storied past. So this is right before Bob Iger became CEO. And shortly after, he became CEO and he takes over for Eisner. And his first role, or his first move as CEO, was that he wanted to acquire Pixar, because like I said, Pixar had surpassed them in animation, was having success after success, and Disney animation was kind of going down the drain. And Steve knew that he had the upper hand, and Steve had a, not exactly the best relationship with Michael Eisner. If you're interested in that, that's a whole nother topic. I would highly recommend either reading this book or going and doing the research yourself. But like highlighted here, I will read this out to you. Steve knew we would struggle to make anything genuinely great, though, given the state of Disney animation, and he almost dared us to try. Now, like I said, the stories just weren't resonating with people, whereas with Pixar it was. And there is a lot more that I'm not going to be able to show you in this exhibit because of the time limit. But basically, their audience was, they wanted children, because this is the animation department, and Pixar, had a lot of pull with mothers. Mothers knew that they could take their kids to go see a Pixar movie and it would be appropriate and their kids would like it. And Steve knew that. They had the data and all the resources from all of the research that they did for that. So Steve knew it, everyone at Disney knew it, and Bob did not have a troubled history with Steve like Eisner did. So Bob called up Steve and he said, hey, I want to buy Pixar. Now, hindsight, all of us are aware of what happened to Steve later on. Steve ended up dying of cancer in 2011. So at this time, Steve already knew that his cancer was back, and he was looking for someone to take over his legacy for him. At this point, Bob did not know that, but all of us are aware because this is history. So that I would like to enter in, that is a very important factor in everything. And yes, I will be getting to Star Wars, but this is a very, very important factor everyone needs to take in, because if this did not happen, George would have never been manipulated into selling Lucasfilm to Bob Iger. Now, during this time when Bob was talking to Steve Jobs, he said that he needed to go to Pixar, which you guys can see I have highlighted here. And he says, I wanted to meet the key people, learn about their projects, and get a sense of the company's culture. What did it feel like there? What did they do differently from us that led them to constantly create brilliance? And this is a big factor in the Pixar deal. If he didn't do this, he would have not gotten Marvel, he would have not gotten Star Wars, and he would not have gotten Fox. Now, yes, Pixar was very successful where Disney wasn't. So he wanted to go and see why was it successful? Why was some animation company that had just been a startup was taking over and surpassing Disney in, both sales and audience retention rate and, that lovability that they have. They were surpassing Disney characters with these original brand new characters, which people argue today, you can't create brand new characters. That's why we have to take original characters that were made by somebody else. All
right, face it. Your life is a complete mess right now. The laundry's not folded. You haven't exercised in weeks. You're spending way too much money going
Luke Skywalker and completely change them, right? Whereas Pixar was proving every point of that wrong because every single movie that Pixar makes is an original story. And that's one of the key elements of Pixar. John Lasseter has said many, many times, and you guys can go and find all of the interviews where he talks about this, where he says, we do not have outside stories. Everything that we do, every film that we make is a story in-house that one of our directors came up with. Up was the story of an old man wanting to go on an adventure. The director of Up got that inspiration from his grandfather who had lost his grandmother and was retired and said, heck with it, I'm 80 years old, I'm going to go see the world. And that's where the story of Up came from. It's a very original and unique story, and it came from a person's own experience. And John Lasseter is obsessed with toys. That's where Toy Story came from. If you go back and look at all of John Lasseter's student stuff from Cal Arts, one of his first videos or his first little animated shorts is The Lady and the Lamp, which is where he brings inanimate objects to life. And you can see that with all of John's stories. Like I said, Toy Story, like Cars. That's what John does. And like I said, John is the head, or he was the head of Pixar.
Excuse me, Ms. Anna, may I interrupt for just a moment? Will we finally get to where the apes walk upright? I know that you're giving a lot of backstory with this, but we're merely today arguing charge number one.
Trust me, this is all very important for...
I'll remind you, you have 30 to 40 minutes to present. Mr. Toto is waiting in the wings to also present his part of the case. I just want to remind you, we have limited time here in court today to merely argue charge number one. So I'm trying to help you in presenting your case. So some people in the chat are impatient. I have all the patience in the world, but I want you to
there is a payoff, sir.
Okay. Thank you. And
this is all extremely, I know I do tend to ramble at times, but this is very important because none of the, like I said, nothing would have happened with Marvel or with Lucasfilm if this didn't happen. So like I get back to my point, and I will go through these a bit faster. I apologize if it is taking too long for everyone. Remember, patience is a virtue. And
apologies for the interruption. I just, I want everybody to have the ample amount of time to be able to present. That's it. So there you go.
I see somebody says Anna has failed at being over prepared. Yeah. Welcome to my life, guys. I've been living this for over a decade. All right. Let me get back to it. So where was I? Where was I at? I got distracted.
I'm sorry. Was it my comment about apes walking upright? My apologies. I couldn't resist
in the beginning, but now my brain is jumbled.
Yeah, I think we just come to this slide.
Yeah, the line that's highlighted in red.
Oh, all right. Okay, so Michael Eisner had a very troubled history with Steve Jobs. Enter in Bob Iger, and Bob Iger had seen what Steve was doing with all of the Apple accessories. At this point, we didn't have iPhones yet, but they did have an iPod that played music, and he wanted to jump on the video aspect of it. So he had negotiated this deal with Steve Jobs earlier, so Steve knew that he was kind of a reliable guy because they had, merged and done a deal there. Now, when when Bob was talking to people like John Lasseter and Ed, he really wanted to emphasize the aspects of, what was making them valuable as a company and why he wanted to purchase them. Again, they were a unique company that was formed on individual storytelling and all of that. So it says, I will read to you here, and I will only read the small part at the end. I took pains to assure John that the only way it made sense for Disney to buy Pixar was if we protected whatever it was that made their culture so unique. Bringing Pixar into our company would be a mammoth transfusion of leadership and talent, and we'd need to do it right. Pixar needs to be Pixar, I said. If we don't protect the culture you've created, we'll be destroying the thing that makes you most valuable. Now, that I think is one of the most important lines, because after this, and I will just, I guess, gloss through the rest of it since everyone is a little bit impatient. That is a key factor. You're going to see me, when I bring up Marvel and with Lucas, they bring up the Pixar deal. And it was that aspect that they, knew that Disney was interested. Oh, this slide is out of order. They knew Disney was interested in acquiring them, but they wanted the Pixar deal, which was Disney buys them for what they are and the success that they are. They leave the culture alone and they continue to let them grow. And that is what they wanted. And that is what George wanted. Ignore that slide because that's out of order. And then this is also Ed, who was the other side of Pixar, which was the more technical side. And, it says that the culture they built is central to the magic they were able to create, and that I had zero interest in forcing them to be anything other than what they already were.
Right. Yeah.
See, that is from Bob Iger, the man that buys Star Wars and, completely destroys it. Now, he bought Pixar in 2006, and again, with the Pixar deal, which is going to come into play. And so I uttered the same sentence to them that I had repeated multiple times during my negotiations with Steve and John and Ed. It doesn't make any sense for us to buy what you are and then turn you into something else. Now, that was his beginning negotiation with Marvel. He acquires Pixar. He immediately sets his sights on Marvel. And when he begins negotiations, he insinuates that they are going to get the same treatment, which is the Pixar deal. We're going to buy you for everything that you are. We're not going to change you. We're just going to help you grow and do better, because if you grow, we grow. Take that in mind. So then he begins his conquest of Marvel. Now, the man who was in charge of Marvel was a very, I guess, unique man. I don't have much experience, researching him, but from everything that Bob presented, he seemed to be, like I said, a very unique person. He asked specifically about the Pixar purchase, and I told him about integrating them into Disney in a way that allowed them to maintain their unique culture. It was at that point that I explained why I was there and raised the notion of doing something similar with Marvel. And so the guy that was owning Marvel, Ike, he, again, very unique person. But guess what? He knew Steve Jobs, like everyone in Hollywood and everyone interested in tech or growing at massive corporations. Everybody knew Steve Jobs. So they were having trouble negotiating a deal. Guess who makes a call? Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs calls them and, helps them and helps Disney acquire Marvel. And it says right here, the call from Steve made a big difference to him. If Steve didn't make that call and, express how much the Pixar deal worked, Disney would have never been able to acquire Marvel. Disney buys Marvel in 2009. Then after Disney buys Marvel and takes over, and Bob Iger gets his hands on, what was going to be made as far as the movies, he gets a call from Steve. I took Reed to see Iron Man 2 last night. It sucked. Bob Iger's response, well, thank you. It's done about $75 million in business. It's going to do a huge number this weekend. I don't take your criticism lightly, Steve, but it's a success and you're not the audience. Where have we heard that before? I'll give you a guess. You can, watch The Force Awakens. Then Steve Jobs, unfortunately, passes away.
12 weeks, 3 months. That's how long it takes to see new hair growing in places where it no longer grows. Like many.
And Bob Iger begins his seduction and betrayal of George Lucas. Now, remember what I said about how George knew Steve Jobs. George actually sold, his company or a portion of his company to Steve Jobs, which became Pixar. When George met up with Bob Iger. They were at Disney World for the reopening of Star Tours. And in that meeting, Bob Iger presented it as, I don't want to be holistic, George, and please stop me if you would rather not have this conversation, but I think it's worth putting on the table what happens down the road. You don't have any heirs, not taking in mind that George Lucas had 3 children at this point and another one on the way. So no heirs. This is very different than how he acquired Pixar and Marvel. He, knew that he didn't have Steve Jobs in his back pocket to make phone calls for him. So instead, he starts to scare George, but he also does have that ace in his pocket, which was the Pixar deal, which George knew about. Now, at this point, George had been done making his, prequels, and he was working on, animated shows and other movies that were in the works. So take that in mind. They may control it, but they're not going to run it. Shouldn't you determine who protects or carries out your legacy? And then he brought up what we done with Pixar. See where the points come in? Which at some point Steve must have spoken to him about. You did that right, he said. You took care of them. If I get around to it, you're the only call I'm going to make. So the only reason George was considering this was he was 68 years old. His children were being his children, and he knew that what Bob was doing when he acquired companies was he would buy them and he would preserve their culture, and he left the people in charge that were already in charge of making creative decisions, and he just was helping financially and distribution wise these companies grow and expand. You're going to see how it is the exact opposite with how he handles George Lucas in Star Wars. So then later on, George makes a call to him and he says, I want the Pixar deal. Now, Bob, in this chapter of the book, like I said, if you actually read this book, you will get a lot more information, but you will see the absolute stark difference in how he handles Marvel and Pixar. In that, it was all about creativity and it was money later. In this chapter, it is so maliciously handled the way that he angles it, where he makes it all about the money and not about the creativity. But when he does mention financials, you can see here, it's not highlighted, but it says $7.4 billion, which is what he acquired Pixar for. That is not what George was focused on. George, every single time he gets upset, and I will continue to show you this, every time George gets upset, it's about creative differences, which didn't have any problems with Marvel or with Pixar. And so when George said he wanted the Pixar deal, he wanted exactly that. He wanted the Pixar deal. He wanted what John Lasseter had, which was Disney buys their company and allows their culture to continue the way it is and to just help it grow, not to completely change it and destroy everything that they had. We'd begun to form a long-term creative vision because we had no creative people assigned to the task. We had nothing really, which meant there was a lot of creative risk and hitting the schedule we'd set for ourselves, and which our financial analysis was based on, would be daunting, maybe impossible. Now, this was Bob Iger's words when he talks about acquiring Lucasfilm, and he is very deceitful in his description of what was going on at Lucasfilm. He claims that they had no movies in production, but then also goes to say that, because it was not a publicly traded company, George Lucas owned, Lucasfilm outright. There was no stockholders or anything like that. So they actually had no information. Everything was a guess. And he gets permission from George later to actually go in with a team, unlike where Pixar and with Marvel, where he went there himself. He sent a team in to do all the research, which again, very malicious, very deceitful in the way he presents information. The exact opposite of what happened with Pixar and with Marvel. And so they continue on, and he, completely leaves out the fact that Lucas did have movies in production, that Lucas did have things in production, like the Clone Wars. Heck, Disney, once they did buy it and they released Clone Wars Season 7, and they made a bunch of changes to it. So to even claim that Lucasfilm didn't have things in production is just a flat out lie. And he, publishes that in his book, even after the fact, with all of the information that he had. So take that in mind. In Pixar's case, the entire acquisition was predicated on John and Ed's continued involvement, not just with Pixar. which is what George wanted. But with Disney Animation, John became chief of officer, but he was still reported to me. With Marvel, I met with Kevin Feige and the rest of their team, and I knew that they had in the works, and we begun collaborating closely to determine the future of Marvel films. With Lucas, there was only one person with creative control, George. He wanted to retain that control without being an employee. Now, this is a little bit of a stickler, which is where I think the problems, spiraled, which was the ego, because after this statement, you can see that Bob Iger's ego was taking a hit, and he was being even more severely malicious to George. Now, it was being made clear that George was not going to have that creative control that John Lasseter and Kevin Feige were allowed when their companies were acquired by Marvel. So he scrambled, and he was able to present them with this. At some point in the process, George told me that he had completed outlines for the 3 new movies. He agreed to send us 3 copies of the outlines. Remember a few slides ago when Bob was saying how they were stressed because they didn't have any creative stories in the works, and they were, stressed about a movie schedule? Well, here George presents them. Oh, you guys want a movie schedule? Here you go. Here is 3 outlines for my sequel. You guys buy companies based on the culture and what made them successful. This, and Bob Iger states, this was a company that George made himself. This was his baby. The culture and the company and the stories wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for George. Here, George presents them with his sequel treatments. And what do? They buy them, but they throw them away and they don't use them.
Excuse me, Ms. Anna, you're halfway through. You've gone for 20 minutes. We've got a maximum of 40 minutes or so.
And I'm almost done.
Okay. I'm trying to help you.
I had this all timed, Chris. You gave me a time limit before.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Just a quick heads up.
Am I boring you?
What's that? No, not at all. It's very. I'm just trying to help you out and keep a clock in your head.
I have this all timed out. This isn't my first rodeo.
Okay.
Yeah, planned it.
All right. Where was I? Let's see. All right. After they acquired Lucasfilm and they kind of phased George out, he was not in creative control anymore. Kathy invited J.J. Abrams, Bob Iger, and a few other people to the Skywalker Ranch to show George their version of these sequels, which was The Force Awakens, and kind of pitched that to him. And it says here, George was immediately upset and began to describe the plot. It dawned on him that we weren't using one of the stories he submitted during negotiations. The truth was, Kathy, JJ, Alan, and I had discussed the direction in which the saga should go, and we all agree it wasn't what George had outlined. George knew we weren't contractually bound to anything, but he thought that our buying the story treatments was a tactic promise that we'd follow them, and he was disappointed the story was being disregarded. Well, guys, that right there is it. I mean, Star Wars is George Lucas. George Lucas created Star Wars. He is the godfather. He is the creator. What he says is Star Wars. And for them to completely just buy that and then throw it out and say, no, George, you're wrong. Even though this is what you created, this universe, this world, these characters wouldn't exist without you. Well, guess what? We're throwing that away and it doesn't matter anymore. That, I think, is it. That's it. That just proves that Disney has, no respect for the fans, no respect for the stories, no respect for the creator, and no respect for Star Wars or anything Lucasfilm did. Hello, hi, you took down my slide. I wasn't done.
Okay. My apologies.
I was just saying that's the point. That's the case right there. It's proven. But I will continue if you share my screen again.
Sure. Yeah.
Again, a few more slides. She's still going. Snooze. I'm sorry. Am I
sorry
boring?
about that?
This is a trial. I am providing evidence. Let's see. So here is an example of what Bob Iger said earlier, which I had shown you. We hadn't begun for long-term creative vision because we had no creative people assigned to the task. We had nothing really, which meant there was a lot of creative risk, and hitting the schedule we'd set for ourselves, which our financial analysis was based on, would be daunting and maybe impossible. And then here we have, which is what I showed you in the last slide, where George literally gave them those stories that they claimed to have need. But, they didn't care, even though that's literally what they need. So he contradicts himself in the chapter. George, he didn't hide his disappointment. There's nothing new, he said. In each one of the films of the original trilogy, it was important to him to present new worlds, new stories, new characters, and new technologies. In this one, he said there weren't enough visuals or technical leaps forward. He wasn't wrong. George was criticizing us for the very thing we were trying to do, which was, he was criticizing them because they weren't making Star Wars. They were making something else. And if they wanted to make something else, they could have just done it. They didn't have to buy Star Wars and destroy it. Each deal depended on building trust with a single controlling entity. There were complicated issues to negotiate in all of the deals, and our respective teams spent long days and weeks reaching agreements on them. But the personal component of each of these deals was going to make or break them, and authenticity was crucial. Steve had to believe my promise that we would respect the essence of Pixar, which they did for a time. Ike needed to know that Marvel's team would be valued and given a chance to thrive in their new company, and George had to trust his legacy. His baby would be in good hands with Disney, which it clearly was not. Bob lied. Bob manipulated George Lucas. He used his good relationship and his friendship with Steve Jobs to manipulate George Lucas. He pressured him with you don't have any heirs, putting, even though, his kids could still take over his company and could, have still control over Star Wars. His daughter, Katie Lucas, wrote some of the best Clone Wars episodes that are there, which again, he didn't have any creative people, right? Now, this goes into point with some of the examples that, Bob claimed. They didn't have anything in production. Well, they had the Clone Wars. Here's a list, and he said that there's no directors aside from George. Well, here's 17 directors and writers that were working and employees of Lucasfilm that weren't George Lucas. So he claims you didn't have any talent aside from yourself. Well, here they are. So this movie is a movie you guys probably haven't heard of. It's called Strange Magic. This was a movie that George Lucas created for his daughters. And it's about two sisters, and, one has to go and save the other one, and they're on an adventure. What does that remind you guys of? Oh, yeah, this is other Disney movie called Frozen. What Frozen is, in the past 10 years, Frozen is Disney's most successful movie. When Frozen was released, it made over $1 billion worldwide, and Frozen 2 surpassed that. And it's a story about two sisters with magic. Well, guess what? They started working on Frozen conveniently around the same time that they started investing and looking into Lucasfilm. This movie, Strange Magic, got completely swept under the rug. I bet you a majority of you didn't know that this movie existed. This would have actually kind of fit into Disney because they have animation. It was a movie with two sisters that were fairies, and there's all these fantastical creatures in this movie that would have fit perfectly with Disney animation. But the story was very intriguing to them. So they took the story from Strange Magic. They completely just sided it. They swept it under the rug. Again, I bet none of you knew that this movie existed. The majority of you in the audience probably didn't. And they took the original plot, made a bit of tweaks, and then came out with a story, 90% similar to it. And then they changed the aspects of Strange Magic and hid it from the world. So it's a very, very, very suspicious that, their most successful movie in the past decade suspiciously came after, and the production started after they acquired Lucasfilm. And Lucas in all of his glory and his fantastic storytelling. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think everything in this book proves the entire point of the case for every single count that there is. And that was my point. I think I hit the time limit. I'm sorry if I bored you guys. History is George Lucas's favorite subject. It is also mine. And I think it is very important to learn history and understand history. That way you're not, going to make mistakes and make the same mistakes. And I think it's, very aware to have your eyes open so you're not taking advantage of a predator who is going to manipulate you, buy out your company, and then destroy everything you ever built and worked on.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anna. We still have Mr. Toto, who will be presenting his side of the other.
I'll go next.
Sorry, what?
I'll go next. It's going to be super brief.
Okay. Mr. Ng, please present your case. I'll put you full screen.
All right.
Thank you.
Don't sing out your tongue
back off of what Anna had presented. This right here is the press release of Disney to acquire Lucasfilm Limited. And Anna was talking about how Disney had basically duped and deceived George Lucas. And I'm just going to present a few points to piggyback on it to show how then Disney duped and deceived the fans. This is their announcement that they're acquiring Lucasfilm. And my whole point here is that they're setting up an expectation that didn't come about. Lucasfilm reflects, this is Bob Iger about Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm reflects the extraordinary passion, vision, and storytelling of its founder, George Lucas. This transaction combines a world-class portfolio of content, including Star Wars, one of the greatest family entertainment franchises of all time, with Disney's unique and unparalleled creativity across multiple platforms, businesses, and marketing to generate sustained growth and drive significant long-term value. So what he is doing here is he is uplifting George Lucas as the one who created Star Wars, created the universe, created the lore, and that there's an implication here that they are going to continue that tradition, and what the value adds that Disney is providing is to bring Star Wars to a broader audience in many platforms, including the business platform. Which brings us to Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy, current co-chair of Lucasfilm, will become president of Lucasfilm, reporting to Walt Disney Studios chairman Alan Horn. Additionally, she will serve as the brand manager of Star Wars, working directly with Disney's global line of business to further integrate and maximize the value of this global franchise. Kathleen Kennedy was brought on not to be the creative director of Star Wars, but to be the brand manager of Star Wars. And somehow she had snuck her way into creative, making all the creative decisions. Yes, she was the executive producer of the 3 Star Wars sequels, but we know what a real executive producer does. They raise the money, and that's what she's doing here. And so there was an expectation here that Disney was going to continue on the lore and the stories of George Lucas from the very beginning. And then lastly, just a little minor point here, and then we can go to Christian. But just as Pinewood Studios was about to begin production of The Force Awakens, we get this little picture here of everyone happy, one happy family, and basically saying that they've cast the entire film. And look, there's Mr. Ford, and over here there's Miss Fisher, and over here there's Mr. Hamill. So the question would be, from this picture, there is that expectation that all 3 legacy characters, Han, Luke, and Leia, were going to be in The Force Awakens. And the question is, what was Mark Hamill doing there, considering he did not have a single line in the script that was presented to them? And so therefore, I want to also reiterate here that there was an expectation that fans were given and that Disney did not come through with. So that is my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ng. I appreciate that.
Life's better when you're under our roof. Save up to 23% by bundling your home and auto with us.
Mr. Toto, your presentation, sir. Do you have documents to present, or will you be talking to the court?
I do. I've got documents. I believe you have them in your possession, but
yes.
I will start by saying what my colleagues have done. They've presented the exhaustive and essential backstory, why things happened the way they did. What I'm going to be doing is showing the results of those actions, the results of that mismanagement. And I think you can start with George Lucas and toys, because George Lucas had the foresight to say, I'm not going to sell away the rights to my toys back in the earliest days of Star Wars. And that proved to be prescient and very financially rewarding. And what we've seen in recent years is the lust for those toys, which was so present in the 1970s and 1980s, dissipated quite dramatically, which I've shown through multiple exhibits, Exhibit A and Exhibit B. And if it weren't for the Mandalorian franchise, which has really been the only part of the Star Wars saga in recent years, which has really kept the spirit, the tone, the sentiment of the great Star Wars franchise, they'd be in serious trouble. And I think that the toy sales, while seemingly minor and certainly not related to the products, do speak volumes about what's going on and how this brand has been misrepresented and misconstrued over the years. And that is organically shown with the lack of toy sales. But that's just part of the story. You know, I think when you think about what the films have done what the stories have done, there's been this massive disconnect. And I will harken back to the great Film Threat founder, Chris Gore, who has famously said, remember all the arguments about the Lord of the Rings films? And we'd say, no. And he'd say, well, yeah, because they did them so well. They were so in line with the spirit of Tolkien's books that they were part of a magical tapestry, and that we've seen nothing of the sort when it comes to the Star Wars franchise in recent years. And that's what my colleagues have shown is the end result of all that mismanagement. The fan revolts have been profound. They've been insulting at times. They've been corrosive. And I think what you've seen that through the years, this fan revolt has really hit at loggerheads with the people behind the scenes at Disney, the creators. And instead of saying, my gosh, we see you, we respect you, we hear you, we honor you, it's been full steam ahead. And a lot of the issues that they've claimed to address and fix and resolve have not been resolved. And I think that's been a terrible part of what we've seen throughout this entire Disney-ification of the Star Wars franchise. I think The Last Jedi was the last straw for many fans. That film changed the saga. It took characters who were beloved and shook them so dramatically, we barely recognized them. We've already discussed how The Force Awakens basically said, yes, we've got these three core characters who have been beloved for decades. We're not going to bring them together. I think what The Last Jedi did was made that even more profound. Of course, you've had Han Solo, who was killed off. Now you've got Luke Skywalker, who doesn't even resemble his old self. And I think that is a really representative of how this story got pushed aside, how there were different objectives here, how the core saga that George Lucas had nurtured for decades and was so beloved was cast aside. The fact that they were able to disconnect with George and not have him embraced in the creative process, I think is shown throughout the films. And while he was not a perfect creator, as seen by his prequel series, which got also a lot of critical brickbats, I think you've seen a drifting away step by step, story by story of why Star Wars mattered in the first place. What was interesting is that the media actually tried to rush the Disney side and say, no, the fans are wrong. Disney is right. How dare you? But of course, the fans are always right. It is their franchise. They made this entire saga possible. They bought the toys. They bought the tickets. They made this saga worth billions to the Disney empire. And so I think when you disconnect from the fans and you disregard what they have to say, I think it speaks volumes to the overall mission, which has been disastrous at times. And I think a lot of it falls on the feet of Kathleen Kennedy, who throughout this Disney endeavor has not been chastised, at least publicly, is still fully in charge of the saga, seems to gain more power as the years go on. And I think that that is just another kind of cudgel being weaponized against the fans. They want her gone. They don't see her as a powerful force. They see her as the anti-George Lucas. And for all his flaws, I think if he were to step in tomorrow, there would be some hope for this franchise.
Excuse me,
yes.
Mr. Toto. Two quick things.
Sure.
You only have a few minutes left. If you have any documents or exhibits you'd like to show, please put the Google document in the private chat, cut and paste, put it there. And Mr. Ing, your co-counselor, he will show whatever you think. The other thing is, please, there's no pandering that you should be doing to the judge.
Well, the facts are relevant. You know, I considered that before this presentation, and I thought, well, it's too relevant not to use. So,
well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it personally, but I must remain impartial. The jury here, some people in the jury brought it up. That you were pandering to me. I just wanted to point it out. Again, I am not deciding this case. This case is being decided by the viewers who are the jury. But I don't want to take up more time.
Sure.
That is an excellent and brilliant comment, Your Honor.
You know, but as a seasoned prosecutor, I weighed the pros and cons of that, but I thought that the merits of those observations were so keen that I couldn't ignore them. But I think I can wrap this up with a little bit of factoids thrown your way. And I think the bottom line is often the bottom line. And if you look at the facts, it's the box office results from the Star Wars saga, the 3 sequels. The Force Awakens drew $494 million in its first weekend worldwide. The Last Jedi shrunk dramatically. That one drew 437 million in that same 3-day period a few years later. Rise of Skywalker, 373 million. Now, again, you could also correspond the US box office receipts, and you will see a dramatic shrinkage in a saga that was building to the epic conclusion. If they had represented Star Wars as it was told, as it was created, as George Lucas had envisioned it, those numbers would be going up and up and up, like we've seen with multiple franchises across the Hollywood galaxy. Instead, they shrank some more, and it's been years since the last Star Wars movie, and we still don't know for sure when we'll see the next Star Wars movie. And I think at the end of the day, that says it all. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, the prosecution will rest. We're going to look at some chat comments and questions before we move on to the defense and then open debate. I was through a little bit of latitude because, you know, this is a new thing that has never been done. And I think that I'm just offering a little bit of latitude. So thank you for your presentation. Let's go now to some comments and questions here before we have a brief break and the defense will then take over. Here we are. Jamie G. Voltaic Blood for 20 says, yes, more open debates and conversation and less tribal bubbles. Truth/reason, along with kindness, respect, and patience will go a long way in uniting fandom. 69 Allen, thanks, FT. From last week, some missed super chats from Matthew Hammond for $4.99. Is it too late to paint yourself gold for the FNT stream tonight? Yes. Scott McKenzie from Threat Level 1 has been a member for 6 months. Is Jeff 3PO going to be subpoenaed for this case? It is very possible that Jeff 3PO will join.
Jeff 3PO.
Brad B3ST has been a member for 2 months. Says prosecution looking fine. There you are. Special Ray for $9.99 says, Your Honor, I'd like to offer a gratuity in favor of the prosecution. Well, thank you very much. Russell Hall for $5. Good luck. Anna is a chronic master debater. I'm like Anchorman. I'm just reading what they're saying.
You have to. Russell Hall is a special human, so take that in mind whenever you read his super chat.
Okay.
Don't believe a word he says.
Particularly when Henry Cavill or Gates McFadden are on stream, she can't help herself. Mark of Reality for $5 says, has anyone for the defense read Bob Iger's book or had time to read the book knowing they should have? We shall find out. Hemorrhoids hurts for $7.99. I speak for all Australians. We demand victim impact statements be allowed in this court. Our trauma runs deep, Judge Gore. Okay. Let the woman speak, Justice Gore. It's time actual Star Wars fans had a chance to give their side to these Disney shills who've got his mic for a decade. Mark of Reality for $2. Anna just showed men's Rhea for charge number 1. Bravo. Sindak for $2. You will address Chris as your honor or judge. That's fine.
What about Frank?
What?
Frank is not allowed in court. J. Bama fan. CG Meat Machine. I have no idea some of these names.
Just say J. Bama fan.
40-minute defense of Disney Star Wars. F that BS. Right. Wes says, patience, people. A real trial takes time and would go like this. I've been on an actual jury. Okay, continuing here. Matt Miglior for $5. Chris, this is your show. If somebody is disrespecting you, your rules, and the panel's time, you should remove them. I'm not going to remove them. I would like to just give people reminders. You know, this is a serious courtroom. It is also a fake YouTube courtroom show. That's all I want to just to let people know. But we take the topic very seriously. Angry Yeti TV says for $2 says, I'd like to know KK's role in all of this. Okay, well, we will get to that in the coming weeks. Mark of Reality for 10. Anna did not bore me. She seems to have done quite a bit of interesting research. All right, well, there you go. Anna did not bore you. So there you go. Scott McKenzie for $5 says, Anna, good points. You went on and on, though versus getting to your points in quick summary and then submit the book for evidence. Remember the jury chat.
That was the fast version of it. I, seemed very down. There's a lot of information.
Jens Anderson of the Tall Threat Level 1 has been a member for 8 months, says, I'd like to sue for emotional distress. Jorge Barracuda for 2. What was charge numero uno again? The link to all the charges are in the description of the episode. It is open and free for anyone to look at. Just a few more here. I'm going to go.
It was a fraudulent misrepresentation. That was what it was, to answer the question. Chris, can I just say, we do have 1,400 people liking and over only 774 likes. If everybody watching is enjoying this, please smash the like button. And if we get to over 1,000 likes, everyone is allowed to call Chris Frank. Thank you. You can take me off.
I'll allow it. I'll allow it. Nerdgenics
for the audience to hit that like button.
Yes, the jury needs to hit the like button so it gets recommended. Nerdgenics for $4.99. Iger's manipulation for creative control and the expectations was malevolent in nature and intent. That's the point. Anna nailed it. Hose A for $1.99. As a juror, can we enter the George Lucas scripts if you can find them? Patrick T for $4.99. Wasn't Iger bragging that he paid less for Lucasfilm than he did for Marvel Pixar?
Sure he did brag.
Yes, I had a slide of that, but I was on a time limit.
Okay. Christian Toto from Andrew Mumpetit. That what she said. Caffeinated me for 2. Just send in a super chat. Thank you for that. Veckel for $1.99. Chris, please do more of these with other movies. We may do other franchises. We'll just see what the reaction is.
Yeah, so
and
far,
thank
so
you.
good.
Special Ray for $9.99, Your Honor. Okay, yeah, we already got that one. So I'm going to save some of these other chats for later. Right now, we're going to have a brief recess. So please, everyone, don't leave. Smash that like button. It's very brief for everyone to be able to go to the bathroom. Defense, you're up next. You will decide the order. I'm going to keep you to that time limit of 40 minutes. If it slides, we have some, I was thinking kind of like a football judge or a football, referee where they kind of add time. So I did add time for pauses or when I interrupted, if that has to happen. So I tried to keep it to that 40 minutes. We'll do the same on the second half and then open debate. Our sketch artist is vigorously drawing away. Let's see what Mr. Blackwood has here. If you could show us on screen. Look at that. That is looks like that's Mr. Toto. That is an excellent sketch. I quite enjoy that. That's great. All right, I'm going to take everyone offline. Quick, brief bathroom break for everybody. We'll be back in approximately 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Okay, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Thank you. Everyone, just a moment here. Just a quick moment.
It was a quiet Wednesday, that May 25. Quiet, that is, until Star Wars exploded onto the silver screen and changed the course of movie making forever. We all know that story, but fast forward 35 years when a real empire consumed it, changed it, broke it, woke it. The magic is gone. The myth is gone.
911 operator, what's your emergency? Oh my God, that's how Star Wars!
The new overlords ignored most everything that made it great. They insulted the fans, betrayed the fans, ignored the fans, ignored the canon, and they even ignored serious, coherent story making. And just how the fuck did we come to this? Dateline Film Threat investigates and holds critics' court on the dark side of the Star Wars saga and the demise of a once beloved franchise who killed Star Wars.
That was well done.
Star Wars. It's great in the arcade. Whoa! TIE
Fighters, fireballs, coming right at me. Watch the laser tunnels. Here's the tunnels. Use the cutouts. Use the force. They're coming too fast. It's late. It's late. My shields are gone. All right, I'm going
Okay.
Hi, I'm Luke Toothbrusher. Gosh, Luke.
Brush twice every day, and even if you enter a danger zone, Signal's fluoride keeps on protecting.
Oh my god.
Hello, R2D2. Who are you?
I'm Ultra, and R2's not talking because he's upset at the moment.
He looks very quiet.
He is very quiet because he's for sale, you see.
Star Wars no R2D2.
What the hell?
Oh
my god.
Our court,
Oh my god.
excuse me, court is now back in session.
I haven't seen some of those.
Everyone take care of their personal business during the break.
No, I didn't.
Are we all good? Okay, great. All right. The defense, you're now up. Please let me know who will be presenting first. I will put them full screen. If there are documents that need to be displayed, if you need assistance with that, please let us know. Who is up first for the defense?
That is, I believe, Tom or if Tom.
Tom. Is it Tom or Dave? Mr. Korn?
Oh, you're on mute.
You're muted, Mr. Korn.
I thought it was Gordo.
All right.
Are you ready, Gordo, or do you want me to do it?
No, I'll go first.
Well, I would like to go first,
and please be aware, there are 4 of you. Be aware that the maximum time we're trying to stick to is 40 minutes. My
So about 10
preference
minutes
is
each.
shorter, more powerful arguments. If you're not speaking, perhaps keep yourself muted and just keep that clock in your head. Mr. Willie for the defense, spelled with an S. You're up first.
So it's 44.
I'll put you full screen here to begin your presentation.
Thank you for your time. Our argument in total is that there is no fraud. That Disney had intended the original cast to be supporting characters, and that also they've had that. So I'd like to exhibit Defense Exhibit A, which Alan has as an article from the Hollywood Reporter. They were talking about when the original writer, before J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan took over the script, that early drafts had the original characters meant to be supporting characters. One of the reason why the friction between the original writer and J.J. and Kasdan was because they wanted to increase the original characters more. However, they decided to go, as you can see in the final product, they decided to keep them as supporting characters. We'd also like to present as Exhibit B the links to the trailer and the teaser trailer for the original Star Wars movie, where especially in the theatrical trailer, they had included shots of the original 3, Han, Luke, and Leia, but they never included any shots of them together. That shows that they were in the film, that they were promised to be in the film, but they weren't. But Disney never made any promises to have them together in a scene.
I don't believe it.
Okay.
Now, going about the reason of why they were necessary to be supporting characters, I would like to enter in Exhibit E and Exhibit G to show with timestamps of how Han and Luke in particular fit in story-wise as mentor characters to tie in with Kylo Ren's story arc and why their sacrifices as characters were relevant since they were supporting mentor characters. If we're reading the critics court charge, the charge is that they represented their plans of the Star. I'm sorry, let me rephrase. So our argument is that my argument is that there is no misrepresentation to the audience that their beloved characters Han, Luke, and Leia were going to be in the movie, but not necessarily together. We also show with the documents they're presented with the timestamps that they, as mentor characters, help tie in and reinforce Kylo Ren's story arc, which is in the early draft of the charges, which was one of the charges, was the fact that they were killed off unceremoniously. In regards to Princess Leia, why we didn't include the Rise of Skywalker, unfortunately, because of the passing of Carrie Fisher, there was not much they can do with the Princess Leia character, since if they were going to have her story end in The Last Jedi, that it would be they would have to overhaul parts of the story, which would inflate the cost, which would inflate the budget, which any responsible filmmaker has to keep the budget in mind.
I don't think Disney really.
And that's my case.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Willie. Who would like to go next? Mr. Korn.
Yes.
Mr. Korn, I'll put you full screen. You have the floor, sir.
All right. I would also like to reaffirm Willie's case that there was no fraud according to the charges in this case here, where they were misrepresented that the cast was not going to be in the films. They are.
Agree with that.
There's mention somehow in the charges that they were supposed to be together, but there's no mention by Lucasfilm or their advertising that they were going to appear together, or were they going to be part of the main story at all. Because if we're going to do a continuing saga, like the prequels show, that there were different characters. There was a thread of like Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan, but there's a continuing thread, and that each thread of the story leapfrogs characters to the next chapter. And that's exactly what the prequels or the sequels have done, is just leapfrog with the original characters, Han, Luke, and Leia, and C-3PO and R2, and springboard the next characters to continue the saga. And also, my base argument is also financial drive, because fans have been criticizing the films, but yet we've been going to the movies and filling the theater seats, and they've been raking in billions of dollars each film. So for Disney point of view, it's not really broken, because there's nothing to fix for them if it makes money. And that's my base argument. And then again, over to
Mr. Korn, real quickly, people in the chat are saying your mic is not connected. It's not,
or it's very low.
It's very low, yeah.
Oh, sometimes when you go on StreamYards, it'll connect to your webcam mic. If you it'll say like mute and then stop camera. If you go to your photo, there's 3 little dots in the corner. You can click that, and then it'll show you all the mics. on your audio, and you can select a mic there. It does that to me too. It'll click my webcam mic sometimes. Uh-oh. He clicked himself out.
Okay. All right. Who would like to go next on behalf of the defense?
You can take me off full screen. I'm not on the defense.
Okay, let's go, Mr. Dave.
I would like to continue this idea that Disney did not commit fraud when it was making The Force Awakens, etc. If we look at the total storyline of Star Wars as begun by George Lucas, you will have episode 1 telling a generational story. It goes from the story with Luke, Han, and Leia. It goes back to Anakin as a child. This means that baked into George's potential vision for 7, 8, and 9, that those were going to be the next generation in the story. Yes, you would have holdovers, and those holdovers would play minor roles, as was shown. But I want to address something that Your Honor has addressed in the past, and that is the death of Han Solo specifically, because that has been characterized as one of the worst cinematic deaths in cinema history, and I have to disagree. If we look at episode 1, we have the death of a mentor figure, of a father figure in the person of Qui-Gon Jinn. In episode 4, the beginning of the next generational story, we have the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Obi-Wan Kenobi was a major player, a central character in the first trilogy. So you have to have, if you're going to keep the same story beats, the same elements that George used in the original Star Wars. He says he used Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces as his blueprint. And in that blueprint is the mentor character who often disappears or dies. And we have this pattern, and it necessarily repeats itself. And so you have to have one of your characters from 4, 5, and 6 be that father figure that dies. And if you're going to continue that, Obi-Wan died by a lightsaber. Qui-Gon Jinn died by a lightsaber. Therefore, in episode 7, the one character that you have that can play that father figure and die is Han Solo. You can't have Leia because Leia is not a father figure. You can't have Luke because Luke represents the hope of a renewal or a transformation of the Jedi Order. The one character that you have that can play that role and step into that role, and is a role that Harrison Ford himself wanted to do for decades, that's Han Solo, and he died by being killed with a lightsaber. So the makers of episode 7 honored George's vision and repeated that particular story beat with the new series. And so therefore, to call that fraudulent, to call that the worst death in cinema history is not true, not fair, and certainly not something that the prosecution would point to as saying fraudulent. That's what I would like to make as a case in the defense of Disney. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Dave. Mr. Gordo, or excuse me, Dr. Gordo,
I'm gonna
you're
pause that
next.
momentarily because I am needing to do a bathroom break. Be right back. Thanks for your patience. We are back. Let's resume.
If you have something to add to the defense before we go to open debate. As to the charges of count 1, fraudulent misrepresentation, do you have anything to add to your defense team? It seems like we have an audio issue here. So I am going to open things up. We have an audio issue here.
You're muted, dude.
I don't know. I'm sorry, Dr. Gordo. We can't hear you.
If you're on a phone, what will happen is if they play clips, you'll be unable to hear or sometimes speak. So leave and come back, and it should fix it.
Yeah, Dr. Gordo, if you would just leave and return.
Yeah, like just refresh it and come back in.
Leave studio and then come back in.
Yeah.
All right. While that's happening, I'm going to go to a couple of chat comments and questions. So it's a brief break while that happens. Very quickly, Jamie, okay, we already got that one actually. So I'm going to skip that. I'll start at the bottom. Gary's Wizard Beard has become a YouTube member. I do want to emphasize going forward, we will be prepping these cases on Discord. If you are currently a member of the Film Threat YouTube channel, we are going to create 3 channels. One, just an open forum for Film Threats Critics Court. That is open to anyone who's on our Discord. Then we will create 2 private Discords, one for the defense and one for the prosecution. Mr. Ng, would you please be sure that post this, that we create those Discord, those Discord forums?
Yes, my daughter will do that for us.
Okay, your daughter. Okay, Mr. Korn, you've returned.
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
much better.
Yeah, it was it went to the default microphone, and I have this lovely mixing board here in front of me, and it for some reason decided to kick back to the anyway.
You sound like a professional broadcaster, and I appreciate it. That's fine. That's why I invited on a group, because I knew, like any real courtroom, we'd have problems. A couple of until Gordo is Gordo back. Dr. Gordo has not returned. All right. Some quick comments and questions here. Matthew Salcido for 5. How are you on the defense with an Empire poster in the back? Well, there you are. Perk Tube 1 for 5. KK killed Star Wars in her library with the candlestick. Okay. Ian Voss for 11 euros. Question for the defense. Given the events in the original trilogy, could the audience have reasonably expected for the 3 to appear in a scene together?
Yes.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That is their answer. JJ for 5. Defense is, hey, they told you it will suck, your fault. You wanted a good movie. Okay. Jocelyn says might be the most viewed Film Threat stream. That's not true. We had 2,600 people watching live during our Oscar live stream.
Wow.
So there we are. A few more comments and questions here. Matuine for 20. We're here to give you the resources you need to continue to grow and succeed. We know it's the people who made your company special. We don't plan to change that. Your Honor, this is the biggest lie of all acquisitions. And last comment here. The bypassed compressor for $4.99 says Ray had no business being in the Falcon cockpit. It was likely decayed hypermatter in the power core for the SRB-42 sublight engine. Please do me justice. And Mike Hawkspins for 2 says, just want to hear you say it. Well, you heard it. Okay. It is now open debate.
Or did Dr. Gordo want to present anything?
Is Dr. Gordo has not returned.
No, he is.
Oh, no, he is.
He is back now.
Dr. Gordo, my apologies. My apologies, Dr. Gordo. Let me put you full screen, and please, your remarks before we move to open debate. You have the floor, sir.
The fence is
Well, I apologize, Justice Gore. I'm not sure what happened. A little technical problem. Unfortunately, I heard none of what was just said, but the defense team has prepared, so I have a good idea of what they said. Rather than unnecessarily repeat anything, I'm prepared to go straight to the conversation, the cross-examination.
Oh, so is that going?
Go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Ng,
There we go.
if it will please the court, could you please read count 1 of the indictment?
Sure. Let me pull it up here. If actually, I think here we go.
Oh, come on.
Count 1, the film threat jury in the name and on behalf of the citizens of the fandom of the Star Wars charges and accuses Lucasfilm Disney with offense of fraudulent misrepresentation. On or about the 30th day of October 2012, Lucasfilm Disney did unethically and fraudulently misrepresent their plans for Star Wars franchise as a whole. Lucasfilm Disney also knowingly set expectations that the original trilogy cast, defined as Han, Luke, and Leia, would reunite in The Force Awakens. The failure to reunite the legacy characters during the events in the Disney Star Wars sequel trilogy and the disrespectful demise of original trilogy cast showed blatant disregard and disrespect for the Star Wars franchise and the fandom.
Could you please define fraudulent for me, please?
Fraudulent would be not being a true lawyer, but it would be to represent something, but maliciously represent something else. Or to maliciously do something else.
Okay, maliciously do something else. And the charge also includes the term unethical. Could you please give me a brief definition for unethical?
Knowingly not do what is right.
Knowingly. Okay, so I listened to, obviously, excellent presentation. You talked about implications and some, you gave your take of the situation, but I'm having trouble explicitly linking to what you presented to the court to the definitions you just provided. So could you briefly re-walk me through the connection between fraudulent misrepresentation and Disney Star Wars?
Yes. Well, I believe Anna had brought up first that there was an expectation among fans that Disney would continue on the that Disney would continue the legacy that George Lucas had established.
Yeah.
That is what we, as the money-paying fans of the franchise, were expecting. Then in the announcements leading up to it, the announcement of the acquisition of Disney, the announcements of the first movie, the photo as seen in the the script read of The Force Awakens, we were led to believe that the legacy characters would return, and in a much more significant way than had actually happened. And I would point specifically to the fact that Luke Skywalker does not show up until the very end of the movie.
Okay, expectingly.
There were laid out expectations, not explicitly stated,
right?
But fans were led to believe that this would happen. Such as if you buy a car, you were led to believe that it would actually work.
Okay, actually work. So it sounds like you're saying that the fans went to the theater, they saw this content, and were disappointed. Is that a fair enough assumption?
Objection leading.
Yes, I cannot speak to the fandom in general.
Okay, I can rephrase.
Well, I objected, which means you don't have to answer until the judge makes a decision on it. He's leading you.
Sustained.
Oh.
So expectantly. So Disney expectantly put this message across to the fans that these things were going to be happen, and fans went to the theater, what they expected did not happen, and therefore that's fraud?
Objection, hearsay.
Oh, damn.
You don't have to make me full screen every time.
If I may jump in, Your Honor, it's not just a fan was disappointed by the quality of the film. That happens all the time. That is unavoidable and certainly not subject to litigation. But the fact that they were presented with evidence that such and such would happen in the film as far as actors appearing and then not being present in the film itself, that's a significant difference.
Mhm. No, and I hear what you're saying about the car analogy. If I went test drove a
Well,
car.
let me just Star Wars Celebration 2015. The big announcement was made. Carrie Fisher was there on stage with Mark Hamill on stage, and if not for a plane accident, Harrison Ford would have been there. And so the idea there that having the three of them, expecting the three of them to be together, which was planned and scheduled, we were expecting also that in the film as well.
Yeah.
And also the term Han, Luke, and Leia is part of the pop culture lexicon. There's a reason why we hear those names, string them together in that fashion. It's a significant part of the legacy that was not honored in those films.
Always. In our own preparation, we referred to them as the big three. I heard some great stories here today, great history lessons. I'm a history teacher myself, really enjoyed it. I'm just having a little different, I'm a little confused that when did Disney Star Wars explicitly state that the big three would be in this movie and all in the same scene together? Did that ever happen?
Explicitly.
Can I just say, Dr. Gordo, that now it sounds like we've moved to open debate. Now that you've engaged with the prosecution, if you'd like to wrap up your comments for in terms of the charges, we can move to open debate, and it can be less formal than we're doing right now. Everyone can talk amongst each other, but what I'd like to see you do is kind of wrap up your argument without engaging necessarily the defense. You'll have an opportunity to do that once we move to open debate. And thank you again for your for taking this so seriously. You please continue.
I'm sorry, Justice. I missed. I was a little out of the loop there for a moment. I thought we were in open debate. So
okay.
I'm ready to proceed. Debate.
Okay. Well, then let's actually formally move to the open debate format.
Can I just say before we do that? So sorry to interrupt. We still haven't heard Gordo's point, and I would like to know his point and where he stands on everything before we enter a debate. He has the advantage of hearing where everyone else stands, so I would like to hear where he stands.
Good point.
Dr. Gordo, if you would complete your statement. Obviously you were leading to a point. If you could get to that, and then it's open debate, a free for all, so to speak, with limits, of course.
Excuse me, Judge.
Yes.
In the private chat.
This is Jedi Ninja 69. You wouldn't think he's doing anything important with his life, but he is.
Glenn asked if we can, after Gordo, come back to Thomas's argument because he had technical difficulties and was not able to articulate it to the jury.
If Mr. Korn would like to make a brief statement before we move to open debate, we can certainly do that. I would like Dr. Gordo to wrap up, and let's get to open debate as quickly as possible. Dr. Gordo, you have the floor.
Quickly as possible. I'm looking at this charge, and I am struggling to find when and where Disney Star Wars made explicit statements that were not followed up with and therefore meet the criteria for fraud. It seems to me, Your Honor, that the fans were simply disappointed. And that disappointment, that means something. That's real. That's important. But just because you're disappointed doesn't mean someone committed fraud. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Korn, if you would like to take the opportunity to make another statement or wrap up briefly. I could hear you, actually. You weren't on your best mic, but go ahead if you'd like to say something.
I think I'm on my best mic now.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Anything you'd like to say?
I just would like to reaffirm and add a little bit more to that. I did not see any actual fraud from Lucasfilm or Disney presenting 7, 8, and 9 in specifically, or just 7. They did say, we have a picture of the original. You have Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill in this big living room setting on a couch sitting together. They are in the movie. But there's nowhere in any of the advertising that they are going to be even together in one scene together, because this is a continuing extension of the Star Wars saga, and the saga has to leapfrog and make a new chapter in the story, and you leapfrog by letting the old characters push the new characters forward, which is what I believe has happened. Plus, I believe that the fans have been disappointed, and rightly so, I would agree, but we should also show our disappointment at the box office, and we haven't done that. We've given the Disney and Lucasfilm no incentive to change anything because we keep filling the theaters over and over again, and they keep breaking in the money. So in they're bottom line people, and they see profit, they don't need to fix anything. And that is my summation.
Can I interject? Both Korn and Gordo brought up fraud. The count is, which states in the Google Docs that I was given, count 1 is fraudulent misrepresentation. If you scroll up,
I think we can get that in open debate.
the fraudulent misrepresentation or misrepresentation, excuse me, is different than fraud. Fraud is defined as wrongful criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. Fraudulent misrepresentation, according to Google definition, is a tort claim typically arising in a field of contract law that occurs when a defendant makes an intentional or reckless misrepresentation of fact or opinion with the intention to coerce a party into action or inaction on the basis of a misrepresentation. I proved all of that with my initial PowerPoint. There was fraudulent misrepresentation.
Your Honor, can I make a motion to begin open debate?
Yeah, it goes into open debate. You can
Wait, everybody, come on. I think I just dented my desk. All right, so we are going to move on now to open debate.
Okay.
This will be a very loose structure. You can poke holes in the defense, poke holes in the prosecution. We are merely debating count number 1. So everyone be clear. Open debate begins. Open debate begins now. The floor is whoever speaks. This is open.
Can I just to establish that fraud and fraudulent misrepresentation are 2 different things. Just so when we start this debate, we have that.
I'm sorry, Anna.
Whoever would like to speak right now, Alan and Mr. Ing and I will try to highlight whoever is speaking, and we will continue with this debate. Mr. Blackwood, just want to remind people is he's been working on some sketches. I see sketches of Mr. Toto. I see sketches earlier of Ms. Anna. So there you go. If you could lower the iPad a little bit, so we can see.
Oh, that must have been on.
Can I have the
Stand by it.
Yeah, there you go. So, thank you, Mr. Blackwood. Thank you. Open debate. Anything that's on the table for charge number 1.
Okay, I would like to address I'll let Gordo after this, but I'm chomping at the bit here. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Because it was the fraud and misrepresentation, and I don't see either here. There was no misrepresentation. When you're promoting a movie, you're teasing people into seeing what could be in the movie. You don't want to show the whole movie because you don't have the whole movie ready. So they're just showing that there's going to be Han, Luke, and Leia in the movie. And that's it. And they're going to be continuing the Star Wars saga with also new characters. So I don't see how anything else is.
Oh, gosh, darn. Seriously?
Either misrepresented.
Well, George felt that way, and he would. it was a fraudulent misrepresentation of the deal that he was getting and the treatment of his legacy. And George, the man who created Star Wars, felt that way.
Objection. I'd like to ask for relevance because George Lucas
I
is not
provided
considered
the evidence. It's in this book. There are references for it. There are all of the.
None of us have read the book. None of us have read the book. So yes.
Well, maybe you should do your research before you decide to engage on a topic like this.
Okay. Well, it was presented to us right here, and I didn't even hear about the book until now. So
The book has been out for years, and it did make headlines when
Was it
all the
relevant?
stuff that was coming out about
That's
Star
nice
Wars.
and all, but can I actually state my objection?
Excuse me.
The objection was relevance. I'd like to state for relevance that George Lucas is not a defendant
No, George Lucas is the creator of Star Wars, and we wouldn't be here without him.
That's nice, but the fans are actually the
That's
party,
nice.
not
We
George
wouldn't be
Lucas.
fans of
George
Star Wars
Lucas.
if it wasn't for George Lucas.
but he's no longer in control.
I know, because it was fraudulent misrepresentation and he got swindled out of his company and his legacy.
According to him, but I mean, he can't. Has he been able to sue them successfully for that?
He can't sue them. He was backed into a deal. He has spoken
Yeah,
out.
we know
about
that he was backed into a deal. He's expressed that. But I mean, if he really did feel that it was fraudulent, he'd be able to sue and have a good case.
That's not how it works when you enter into a business arrangement to purchase a company.
Then what is? How is your case that it's?
I presented it earlier.
You did.
Oh, is
but
that
I mean, how is it relevant?
Pastor?
The entire topic of this count is fraudulent misrepresentation, and I proved to you all how exactly that happened.
Nobody read.
Misrepresentation or misrepresented the deal that they were making to buy Star Wars and protect George's baby and his legacy, which they did not do. They bought his script and they did not use him. They complained that there was no creative pipeline set up, but there was. He misrepresented all of the facts, and you can easily go and research all of that like I did and see.
Let me give you an actual passage from Bob Iger's book. He says George immediately got upset as they began to describe the plot, and it dawned on him that we weren't using the stories he submitted during negotiations. Again, this is Bob Iger speaking. George knew we weren't contractually bound to anything, but he thought that our buying the story treatments was tacit promise.
Right. I'm going to pause it real quick. This, excuse me, this message for the jury says, also at Star Wars Celebration that preceded the first sequel, Kathleen Kennedy stated that we would see the reuniting of Luke, Leia, and Han.
That we'd follow them, and he was disappointed that his story was being discarded. I'd been so careful since our first conversation not to mislead him in any way, and I didn't think I had now, but I could have handled it better. So there is at least gray area there that George was under an impression that his stories would be used, and was disappointed that it happened, and yet I think he knew legally he had no recourse in that case.
We mentioned before how Mark Hamill basically does not appear in The Force Awakens, which is as fraudulent as possible for two reasons. One, there was that classic picture, that black and white picture of the entire crew, old and new, reading the script. Why was he even there? I mean, he must have been fetching coffee. But also, I believe that Mark Hamill himself did the voiceover for one of the teaser trailers for The Force Awakens. Now, he is a very talented voice actor, but certainly you could get any voice actor to read that material. But using him and connecting with the fans was, again, another misrepresentation of, oh, yeah, by the way, Mark Hamill, the actor you've been loving for 40 years, he will be in the story. No, he won't be. And we saw that too late.
If I may.
Mark Hamill was in the very last shot, but technically he was there. And
yes, technically.
There were extras who had more room in space and
from a
screen
certain
time
point of view, Mark Hamill was in the movie.
So if he popped his head in, he was in the movie.
Yes.
But I think what you're describing is what would be considered the bait and switch. Let's just take Mark Hamill for a second. You know, if Mark Hamill is doing press, he is doing teaser trailers for it. There's an expectation that he would be in the movie, and yet he is he is technically in the movie. but not in a way that is satisfying to the expectations of fans going into the film prior, not knowing anything about the movie.
They were probably stormtroopers who were in the movie much longer, even though they had masks on more than Mark Hamill.
Yeah, Prince Harry and Prince William were in the movie longer than Mark Hamill.
I think Father Dave has something to say.
I've got a couple of things to say. First of all, the fraudulent misrepresentation that you're talking about is between the entities of George Lucas and Disney. The charges being brought are being brought by and against the fandom. That's my understanding. And so therefore, your evidence has no bearing on the relationship between Disney and the fans.
I would 100% disagree with you on that.
And the second point that I would like to make in reaction to Chris is that if you pay attention to the grand scope of the Star Wars story, Star Wars isn't the big three. And the 16 years that existed prior to episode 1, George Lucas proved that. There were dozens of novels, dozens of computer games, one of my favorite role-playing games of all time. Only a fraction of those products included the big three, and yet they were immensely successful. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 did not include any of the big three until a little, reference to it in episode 3. They were immensely successful. We could quibble about their quality, but they were successful. And they set up a template where you have generation 1 with 1, 2, 3. You have generation 2, 4, 5, and 6. And only a couple of the characters from 1, 2, and 3 made it into 4, 5, and 6.
R2 and 3PO.
And so you have a template set about by George himself where the big three are going to play minor roles or smaller roles in 7, 8, and 9. And anybody paying attention to the larger scope of what is Star Wars, and Star Wars isn't just Han, Luke, and Leia. Star Wars is our version of the hero of 1,000 faces. It's our story. And people through computer games and role-playing games and the novels made Star Wars their own story. And Disney continued that by bringing a new generation of characters. We can quibble about the quality all we want, but they were doing exactly what George set forth, at least in a narrative pattern. So to say that that's fraudulent, and fraudulent misrepresentation between Disney and the fans is just not true.
All right, let me read out the first count. The film threat jury, the name on behalf of the citizens of the fandom of Star Wars, charges and accuses Lucasfilm Disney with the offense of fraudulent misrepresentation. On or about the 30th day of October 2012, Lucasfilm Disney did unethically and fraudulently misrepresent their plans for the Star Wars franchise as a whole, meaning George Lucas, the company, and the sale of Star Wars. Also, George was a big fan of Joseph Campbell, Power of Myth, Hero of 1,000 Faces. What you brought up earlier with Han Solo's death was the death of a villain, not a hero. It is very well laid out in not only Joseph Campbell's, but also Carl Jung's interpretation of what that means. Chris did an excellent video on it, or excuse me, Frank did an excellent video on it back in the day. But to, just go over your point, it's not just the fandom, and it's clearly laid out even in, when it first represents it, and then in the very last sentence it ends with Star Wars franchise and fandom. That would include George Lucas, the sale of Star Wars, and everything that pertains to that.
I would also add to that everyone on the prosecution, I don't think any of us ever expected that the first movie, this first sequel, would be the Han, Luke, and Leia story. I think we all knew that they would be supporting characters and that they would be basically passing the torch on to the new characters, which is perfectly fine. And I think that was our expectation. I think, though, in the promotion of it, in the announcements being made about it, even early on with, when the purchase was made, the word had gotten out pretty generally that George had scripts ready to go. And so there was an expectation that fans had. And that, we can quibble about the amount of time. I don't think they should have been in more than half the movie, certainly. But there was an expectation that the characters we beloved since 1977 would appear in a meaningful way, and they didn't in that first movie.
If I may jump in.
Jump in.
Okay.
Open debate. Go.
Wait, so Anna, you told the great story there about Iger, and certainly he sounds like the villain in this story, that he did some really shady things.
Yeah,
so
he is the
just
villain.
so that I understand,
One of them.
the charges here are against Lucasfilm Disney.
Franchise as a whole.
Okay, so is Iger synonymous with Lucasfilm Disney for the purposes of our time here today?
When you become the CEO of a company and you own everything under it,
You're the voice.
Okay, so we can use Lucasfilm Disney and Bob Iger interchangeably. Is that fair enough to say?
well, I think you should, say what you mean, because we have a chat just so everyone doesn't get confused. That's why I define fraud and fraudulent misrepresentation. And sometimes it is just easier to say people's names.
Okay, great. So my question is it okay if I proceed to refer to Bob Iger in the place of Lucasfilm Disney? Would that please the
You're
crowd?
making.
Pardon?
It depends on the point you're making. I don't know you, so I can't assume on what you're saying.
Oh, okay. Well, let's continue then. So what I am doing right now is I'm proceeding to treat Bob Iger as Lucasfilm Disney. If you feel I'm going somewhere where I shouldn't, please just jump right in. Because what it seems like is happening, if I'm making notes about your argument, and what I'm writing down here is Bob Iger did not use George Lucas material, which was disrespectful to George and everything he did. Therefore, fraudulent misrepresentation was committed. QED. Is that fair enough to say? Because that's why I feel
Well, no, that is actually incorrect. He did not use his sequel treatment, but he did go on to later, changing the Star Wars Clone Wars. He did use the initial plot for Strange Magic and, manipulated it into Frozen. And he did make other changes based on stuff that was already there. But he did claim that George didn't have any of that when he was assessing the company for its value. So it's a yes and no question. So if you have more specific points that you want to talk about, we can talk about that.
Okay, so yes or no, did Bob Iger announce that the big three were going to be in many scenes together, and you could expect mind-blowing stuff out of these three people being the scene together? Yes or no, did that ever happen?
I don't know. I don't know every word that Bob Iger's ever said.
Someone has a good point here. Retribution Zero says, objection. The definition is issued in the court documentation. He's trying to amend the charge. I just want to keep the conversation focused. And I know it's written in legal language, which is, which can be fun. But the point is that did the audience feel there was some fraudulent misrepresentation, because the audience felt they were going to get one thing and got a different thing? The audience felt as if Han, Luke, and Leia would be reunited in Star Wars sequels, and that did not happen. I think that's the core argument. I'm not trying to put words in the prosecution's mouth here, but I'm reading the chat, and if I'm reading the chat correctly, that's kind of the thing that they'd like you all to debate.
Okay,
and also, you don't need to be in this part of it. You don't need to be super formal. This can be also just like a regular live stream where people debate. I mean, I'll step in if I think it's going over the line, but feel free to argue this stuff and debate it. And and go right ahead.
Okay.
So bottom line, you paid for this, but they gave you that. Agree? You paid for this, but they gave you that.
That's certainly an element of it, yes.
Okay, you paid for this, but they gave you that. There was, if I can tell a very quick story, there was a Canadian businessman went down to the island of Turks and Caicos to open up a movie theater.
Can
And
I just
so-
say, can you not block your mouth because it cuts off from your microphone?
I'm sorry. So anyways, this guy opens a movie theater down in Turks and Caicos. Opening night, shows the movie. Locals show up. A lot of them fell asleep. They got up, and afterwards they went up to the booth. Yeah, I didn't like the movie. I want my money back. And they tried to explain that's not how a movie works. I'm very sorry if you didn't like the movie, but you bought it, you used it, that's it. No, I really want my money back. I'm sorry, we don't do that. So they burned the theater down. That's the end of the story. The point is, here are people who feel they went and paid for something, they didn't get what they wanted, and they came out with this. My point being, disappointment. I mean, I just can't equate disappointment with the feeling, I got ripped off. I paid for this, I paid for this, but they gave me that. So, rhetorical question. Picture yourself, December 2015. You're on the way to The Force Awakens, and an insider calls you up and says, hey, I got to tell you, Han, Luke, and Leia are not in a scene together. Do you proceed to go and watch The Force Awakens, or are you so offended you don't
watch it?
I just want to point out that the chat, someone in the chat, Zavin, who's a member, thank you, says this is the worst metaphor ever.
Can I actually answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
So I actually have a perfect example for that. I would like to point out first that it was a straw man argument. Also, I'll get to, but so I know we're all Star Wars fans here. This is a Star Wars trial. Star Trek is also a nerd fandom aspect of it. And one of the best sci-fi movies ever made, which is critically acclaimed as one of the best sci-fi movies ever made, is The Wrath of Khan. And Khan and Kirk are never once in the same room together. I mean, they talk through the screens like we are now, but never once are Ricardo Montalban and William Shatner in the same room. But it still has that dynamic energy, that tension, and that heart behind it. So you can do a movie where the characters aren't in the same room, never are one-on-one with the scene together, and still make a great movie. So that's, an example for your point. Another point is, which I think you had one story and then you kind of went off on another. Can you make the first point again? Because I did have something to say and I got distracted by your second point.
It was they fell asleep in the theater. I'm sorry. Yes.
Burning it down.
The whole burning it down. Yes.
I would argue we didn't burn anything down. Svan didn't. We voiced our upset at what happened. I would argue that they burned the theater down while we were inside. And when we said, hey, you tried to burn this building down when we were inside, what the hell? And they're like, you're a racist, misogynist man baby that lives in your mother's basement. That was their answer to burning down the thing that we loved while we were there in it.
Yeah, I think to your metaphor, it would be as if Disney had bought your favorite movie theater, showed a bad movie in it, and then all the fans burned it down. There was already a relationship with the movie theater prior to the new owners coming in, and there's that upset. And then let me also make this broader point. The entire charge is the fans. Basically, it's the murder of the Star Wars franchise. The accusation that Disney had murdered the Star Wars franchise. And the reason we are going into this specific point is because this is the first charge. The first, we're saying that this is where it all began.
Okay.
This is the first step that Disney took. And we will go down the line with the weeks to come to just build upon this point.
Okay.
And I think here what we're trying to say is that we were promised something. George Lucas was promised something. And by bringing George Lucas into it, in a way is a connection between what fans expected, because what fans expected is what we thought George was what he expected as well. And so that's what we were talking about.
Excuse me, Mr. Ng. Let me just say this. Dr. Gordo told a story where someone fell asleep in a theater. I'm falling asleep during this debate. I really want to see you all step up.
Okay.
I just
Your dog is ugly.
And I'm serious, Mr. Ing. You have grimaced your last time in my courtroom. I see you smiling. In between arguments.
Oh yeah,
it's
hard
hard
to
to
the dog ever.
Let me enlighten you. A series of very short videos. George Lucas's name has been invoked many times. I think it would help everyone here in this debate, because we're gonna maybe go another 20 to 30 minutes on the debate before we wrap things up. But I think we should bring Mr. Lucas into the conversation. Just indulge me with a series of very short videos.
The problem is that making film is an art. Selling film is a business.
Right.
The trouble is that they don't know how to sell films. As a result, they try to make you make films that people will go to without them having to be sold, which is the real key to the problem. And if they weren't so backward and, they just, if they can't put a film in a theater and have people rush to the door, they're not interested.
When I took over the licensing, I simply said, I'm going to be able to make T-shirts, I'm going to be able to make posters, and I'm going to be able to sell this movie, even though the studio won't.
One more really quick.
You're always surprised with characters. I mean, in film, it's even more dramatic than it is in writing, because eventually you actually take a real person and stick them into that character. And that real person brings with him or her an enormous package of reality. I mean, 3PO is just a hunk of plastic. And without Tony Daniels in there, it just isn't anything at all.
One more.
I did research to try to distill everything down into motifs that would be universal. I attribute most of the success to the psychological underpinnings, which have been around for thousands of years, and the people still react the same way to the stories as they always have.
So what lessons do you think they're taking away from watching Star Wars in Italy and Malaysia and South America?
The average human being has much more awareness of the other cultures that coexist with them on this planet, and that certain things go across cultures, and entertainment is one of them, and film and the stories that I tell cut across all cultures, are seen all around the world.
One last one.
What I was trying to do is stay independent so I could make the movies I wanted to make. But at the same time, I was sort of fighting the corporate system, which I didn't like. And I'm not happy with the fact that corporations have taken over the film industry. But now I found myself being the head of a corporation. So there's a certain irony there, is that I have become the very thing that I was trying to avoid, which is basically what part of Star Wars is about. That is Darth Vader. He becomes the very thing that he's trying to protect himself against.
Okay.
And with throwing that gasoline on the fire, back to open debate between the prosecution and the defense.
Your Honor, may I?
Mr. Korn, yes.
Okay. I still want to see how there was fraudulence and misrepresentation, or even the death of Star Wars, when even after Episode 7, the theater that sold out and made a lot of money. The Force Awakens sold out and made a lot of money. So the fans just kept going and saying, we don't like this movie so much, we're going to give Lucasfilm all our money. So I don't know how it's dead if the fans just keep going to see the movie. To Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger, it's not dead at all. It's very vital. We have The Mandalorian. We have Boba Fett, we have other cartoons and other shows and games still being produced that are still very popular. And so I don't see how it's dead. I don't see how there was any sense of misrepresentation when they do have Episode 7, they have, the hero's journey. They have some of what is set up, because even Lucas himself said, hey, I became the very corporation I, set out not to be, ironically. And he did, and he gave us the prequels. And I have to bring up the prequels because there's a jumbled mess there for the writers and producers to latch on to make it all connect to 7, 8, 9, 1 through 6 to connect on and carry on. And so there's a lot of continuity that's really hard, and they still managed to pull off what they could. And whether Lucas is directly involved or not is irrelevant. What we've seen on the screen is, and we still, in Star Wars is support, but we still, the only reason it's on life support is because the fans just keep filling the theaters. And if we really want it to die and say we don't want this, we have to let them know with our wallet.
Well, to argue, sorry, can I argue that point before you go?
My colleague has the floor.
Not you. I was saying the guy that was pointing. I didn't know you wanted to talk, but I'm sorry. I also, sorry, I think you're muted.
Father Dave, you're muted.
Yeah, there you go. Just really briefly to argue your point, there is a clip out there. It's actually my intro on my channel of Mark Hamill giving a presentation to young actors where he says, just because a movie makes money doesn't mean it's good. As an example, Transformers. And you can ask any hardcore Transformers fans, the movies do not follow the continuity at all. And
right. That's not my point, is that it's not dead, and I still don't see any fraudulence.
Well, you're talking about the fandom, and I already showed you the fraudulence. You were pointing out another point, which was about the money.
It's
and
irrelevant. They're both intertwined with each other, because if it's dead and they were, fans were so disappointed that it wasn't Star Wars, why would you go to see another Star Wars
because
movie?
the people that are going to see Star Wars, the new Disney Star Wars, aren't real Star Wars fans. They're new
And how do
Disney.
we know that? Well, was there an objective way
Christian,
to
I think this was your
measure
point
that?
when you were presenting.
Can I speak to this? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Father Dave.
There's someone I know that 200 Watt Studio calls me out as disingenuous, and that I'm building a straw man. And I think my colleague is making a very important point, and that is that people are disagreeing with my assessment that Star Wars isn't George Lucas. Star Wars isn't Disney. You just heard that, George talking about C-3PO, putting a human being in there. Film is a collaborative process, and part of that collaborative process is the audience and how the audience interacts and participates in that story. And Star Wars as a franchise is not dependent upon George. It's not dependent upon Disney. It's dependent upon us. And our interactions with it will determine the future of Star Wars, not Disney, not George. And again, for 16 years in between Return of the Jedi and Phantom Menace, Star Wars existed almost solely in terms of new content as participatory media, games. And we played characters in the Star Wars universe. And that Star Wars universe continues to live in those games. And so we will continue to make Star Wars as fans. And it doesn't matter what Disney does. It doesn't matter what George does.
Real quick, Ms. Anna, many were saying you should play She-Hulk in the chat. Leave that up to them.
Favorite characters, but I am far too short and I cannot turn green.
Okay. Well, John Long, last name, who's a member, says, now you have to define a real Star Wars fan. I can't wait to hear that.
I have many times on my channel. You can go like, subscribe, and watch those videos. But I did have a point for what was just said by Father Dave, is it?
Father Dave, yes.
Father Dave. Okay, you brought up how it doesn't matter with George Lucas. Then you brought up the EU, which when it was the years in between, George Lucas had final say and approval of all of those characters. So it was still George's guiding role in all of it. Now, I take it by your name and what I see behind you that you are a religious man. So to argue to your point, what is religion without God? It does, you need participants to follow the will of God, right? But at the end of the day, what is it without God? So what is Star Wars without George Lucas? It's completely soulless and a shell of what George Lucas created. And yes, there are other participants in it, just like there are in the Bible. But at the end of the day, they're following the will of God, just like in Star Wars with George Lucas. Who is playing with this?
Very quickly, I just want to mention. Sorry, just a moment. Mr. Toto has to leave. He has a prior engagement, another case. Mr. Toto, thank you so much. You should follow Christian Toto, Hollywood on Toto. Look up Christian Toto, an accomplished writer, very active on social media. And Mr. Toto, thank you. You are dismissed. And thank you so much for your participation, your arguments, and this beautiful sketch by Mr. Blackwood, which I'm sure you'll find on Instagram. Thank you, Mr. Toto. We'll see you in a future debate. My apologies. I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you, Anna? Ms.
No,
Anna?
but I did break the seal earlier, so I have to pee. I'll be right back.
Okay, Ms. Anna will also be taking a quick bathroom break. Who would like to continue? Mr. Korn, Mr. Korn, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm jumping at the bit because Anna said what she defines as a true Star Wars fan. That's a no true Scotsman fallacy right there, right? If you know, no true Scotsman would, no true Star Wars fan would, whatever, if they've heard of the no true Scotsman fan. So that's an irrelevant argument to say that, because there's enough fans that go see and just flood the seats. It doesn't matter what you think their level of fandom is. These are people that are going to see and pay to see and keep what Lucasfilm and the people running it see it as. And it doesn't matter. And God, George Lucas, has sold off the rights. He is no longer God now. It is Kathleen Kennedy. So we have to bow to what her. And she has often said in interviews that she does side with the artist, but every good producer has to totally side with the money side because they have to make sure their big job is to make sure that everybody gets paid, including the director and the actors and the producer and the studio, to make sure that they get their money's worth. So it's a balancing act, and she's always put in the crosshairs. People like that are put in the crosshairs. Now, I'm not totally defending all of her decisions. Just to let everybody know, please do not come with torches and pitchforks to my house. I do not defend her, but I am just saying that this is things that you're asking for an open discussion, and these are things we need to keep in mind because the fans don't completely write every bit of Star Wars. They shouldn't, because it would be a big mess.
Of course not.
We should have some input, and if we want to have actual input that they're going to listen to, we have to do it with their wallets, and you can't say that no true fan. So, and it's my defense is that there's it's money. It boils down to money, and if we really don't like it, then we should stop buying the video games, stop buying the comic books, stop buying the cartoons, stop subscribing to Disney Plus, stop going to the theaters.
All right. Well, everyone has their finger up. Just a moment. Really.
Luke Skywalker, the young hero of Star Wars, as he evolved from script to storyboard to actor in the person of 25-year-old Mark Hamill, Luke became a projection of every young boy's adventurous spirit.
The best thing about this whole film has been the kids, because they think they know me now. And since my character in the film appeals to them, they feel very safe with me. They feel like, well, I could do that.
We'll start with, we're going to get everyone. Father Dave, start with you, and we'll go to Mr. Willie and continue.
Well, to answer Anna's religious question, since that's my area of expertise, one of the things that you have to understand about at least the Christian point of view is that from the very beginning, God, the creator, created Adam in the image and likeness of man, meaning that Adam, mankind, humanity, is a co-creator with God. And we see this in Genesis when God takes the animals in front of Adam to allow Adam to name them. There is a relationship that exists within the creative process, regardless of who you consider to be God. And in the case of George, his creative process, I just lost mine. His creative process was not entirely dictatorial. He had to be this cooperative being. He had to co-create. And part of that co-creative process was the audience. The audience loved this movie. And he didn't even plan to make Empire Strikes Back because he didn't think the audience would love it so much. The audience is much a part of this creative process, as is George. And as time goes on, we are going to be more important to the process of Star Wars living than George ever.
Yeah, I think what this whole the 9 charges is our way of saying no, we're not. We are not part of this process. That Disney is a part of this. The company that owns Star Wars, owns all the intellectual properties, own everything ever connected with Star Wars.
Yeah, they don't want the fans involved.
They are the ones in charge, and that we as fans are not a part of that, and that we are expected
really depressing.
And I will say that that the reason why The Force Awakens was such a big box office blockbuster was the fact that it had us as the built-in audience, and that we were going to see it no matter how good or bad it was, because we wanted to see new Star Wars, and they took advantage of that. And you know, I think over time, over the next 9 weeks, and over time, we're going to see what exactly Star Wars has and what Disney has in store for us fans for Star Wars. Because as we say, we believe that they murdered Star Wars.
To jump in, he chose to collaborate with other people. He did not have to, but that was his decision as the creative head of Lucasfilm. Disney, on the other hand, is choosing to do the exact opposite of what George did. George listens to feedback. He takes that in mind. He allows people to prosper under his company. Like, they're doing the Ahsoka show. That was based on Dave Filoni's character that was created alongside of George Lucas. We have the Clone Wars. All of that, all of the EU, all the video games that you brought up, George chose to make those collaborations and to overlook it, like bringing back in the Bible with that. Again, you wouldn't have all of that. You wouldn't have Adam if it wasn't for God. You wouldn't have Star Wars if it wasn't for George Lucas. Then, like, you know, I'm sure with the Bible, you had, you know, God gave us his one and only son, Jesus Christ. And we had, you know, the Romans came in and decided they didn't like that, and they crucified Jesus. And we all know what happens from there. And I mean, it's, you brought up Joseph Campbell. We have that with Star Wars. You see that in the Bible. And I mean, with all of the points being made right now, all the points that you brought up also with George and, you know, did not plan the Empire. George had a rough outline of where he wanted the story to go. And yeah, he didn't know how people were going to react to it. And that's why first Star Wars film is, you know, a completed story in and of itself. And you can watch that by itself, never see the rest, and it's a complete story. But George did have plans for where he wanted things to go. And as, you know, creative people, even if they get told no, they're always going to find another way to do things. And I mean, that's shown in the Bible as well. When you're, you know, when you're told no, you find another way to do things. That's, you know, when the Christians were being persecuted by the pagans and the Romans, and you weren't allowed to show your religion. That's where the fish comes in. They would write it in the sand, right? To let them know that you're safe to talk about, you know, Jesus with us. And that's kind of what's been going on with all of this. So you can bring Star Wars into every asset of reality.
Yeah, well, you just made my point.
I made my point.
No, you just made my point.
No, I didn't.
But what I find very ironic here is the fact that suddenly we're suddenly transformed into the idea that the people who are supposedly defending Disney and the people who are actually defending the participatory power of the audience And the people who are supposedly prosecuting Disney are the ones trying to hold up the myth that Disney actually
That's not
is
exactly what
Star
I'm at all. I
and
don't think you're understanding
we
that
have
point.
the power, and that it's all up to we're completely beholden to Disney for our ability to participate in and love and do Star Wars. And I think that's a lie, and I think it's unfortunate.
Okay, Mr.
I don't think you're understanding the point I'm making.
Okay, we did.
You're understanding the point I'm making either.
Okay, so
We're
so you disagree. Mr. Willie, go ahead. Say what you want to say. You're muted.
Thank you. So my point is to the fact, well, there was a lot of points, honestly, but when you look at it, George Lucas is like, as someone once said, filmmaking is a team sport. And, George Lucas, while he needed a team to make his movies, while he is considered an auteur, I mean, he needed that team to be able to make his movie. He changed C-3PO's character from being like a greasy used car salesman to being like a butler, but just because of Anthony Daniels' taking of the role. For example, of him, kind of changing his gears. The problem is, I think, is that George Lucas played ball and was open to criticism and was open to new ideas and in his own way. And Disney is doing the same. They're just doing it they're just playing their ball. And they bought Star Wars. If they bought Star Wars from George Lucas. George Lucas signed those documents, collected that money, and yes, while he was miffed that they didn't use his story treatments, that happens in Hollywood a lot. It's not a fraud. It's not fraud that he used it. And now, while there's people in the chat saying that, oh, well, Disney broke it and whatnot, that's up for debate. That's up to individual taste. I know. I'm saying that's up to individual taste.
And you would have Star Wars without George Lucas.
But that's not the point here. Is that the point is that there's fraud, and
there is. They bought the company from George.
They bought the company, but they still produce Star Wars movies that people went to go see.
And they misrepresented what they were going to do with the company.
How did they misrepresent anything? I don't see.
I already went through that point by point.
You did, and I still don't see. As those points were coming up, I didn't see any fraud because they still see a Star Wars movie. We still see a conflict. We still see people learning about the Force.
Preserve the culture and the creative ideas that George laid out. They did not do that.
But they still produced. Disney had just bought Star Wars,
but they did not preserve the culture.
And they did not preserve the culture. They still have the Jedi. They still.
Well, when you have the man who created it telling you it's not right.
Can I finish, please? Can I finish, please? Okay, because it's really hard to make a point when I keep getting interrupted. So
I'm trying to address each point because it tends to be here's one point, here's one point, here's one point. So I figured I would just address them as you make them. I'm sorry. I'll stay quiet until the end.
Okay. Because I still don't see any fraud because they still have all the basic points they have. They even have the hero's journey. They're not really well done, but they're still done mostly. They presented a struggle between good and evil, the light and the dark. They have the Jedi. I honestly like Ryan Johnson's take on the Jedi and that whole thing of like, were we taking too much on ourselves and putting too much, letting the whole public, the whole galaxy, rely on us too much and not give them a sense of independence. Like they had to rely, like, hey, we need help. You got to bail us out because we don't want to take any initiative. So that was a unique perspective that I thought was interesting. The rest of the movie, not so much. I didn't like the Mary Poppins bit at the end. They should have just thrown in the umbrella with Carrie Fisher holding the Mary Poppins umbrella because they own that too. Would have just been the cherry on top, but it doesn't matter. All these things they still presented a Star Wars movie that people went to see in droves. So, and if it's dead, And to address the point somebody brought up that the movies got diminishing returns, the original trilogy, Star Wars, made a whole lot of money. Empire Strikes Back made money, but not as much. And then subsequently for Return of the Jedi. And also to say about collaboration, sometimes George he fired Gary Kurtz, who was working with him very early on American Graffiti and Star Wars and THX 1138 and Empire Strikes Back. And then he said, okay, I'm sick of you telling me no. So he hired, Howard Kazanjian and other people that just would not argue with him too much, and which is fine if you want to get things done faster. But then you get Ewoks and you get midichlorians, weren't a great idea. And then he's jumbling around with the prequels, which are a jumbled mess, which is also lays a harder groundwork for something to grasp onto to set up for the sequels. So now I'm finished.
Okay, so I took notes so I wouldn't interrupt you. All right, I'll just go backwards since it's fresh in my mind. With Kurtz and the creative differences, well, his ex-wife, when obviously they were married, edited. So it's like, when it comes to that and creative differences, when you work really well with someone and then something happens later like that, I think we can all understand the human aspect of that, So that one, it's like human. People don't always get along and agree on things, just like we're all doing right now. But I like the Ewoks, but that's because I was a child when I watched them, and I like cute and fuzzy things. But this is all just my point of view and your point of view. It really doesn't have.
You can see the zippers in the Ewoks when you watch it in the theater.
I'm sorry, what?
You can see the zippers on the Ewoks when you see it in the theater. That's all.
I never got to see it in the theater.
But they had it last week in the theaters as a Fathom event. Did you know that?
Well, no, totally off top. Where I live, it's just all the rich people that don't want to deal with their children, they get the movie tickets. So if you go to any theater by me, unless it's 21 and over, it's
right. Okay.
It's all
right. Anyway, carry on. Sorry, I just thought it.
So yeah, I don't get to see a lot of them in theaters. But Star Wars being dead was your claims about it and how it's still making money. What about Solo? Solo lost money, and then Bob Iger came out and said Star Wars fatigue. Then the other one, with The Last Jedi have too much power and everything in the galaxy. I think you should watch the Clone Wars because there's a lot of points that plots like that in the Clone Wars and how they go to kind of more obscure planets and how it's like the Jedi aren't here. They even touched on that in The Phantom Menace when, Qui-Gon meets Shmi and Anakin. He's like, hey, like this kid's got a lot of midichlorians. Why didn't if he would have been in the inner planets, he would have gotten discovered. So there are those elements. You should also read Timothy Zahn's trilogy and then duology because they talk about.
I've read those.
Yeah,
and I've seen the Clone Wars, and I've actually seen I started to watch the Lego stuff, and there's some good stories in there. And people bringing up, I see in the chat, people bringing up The Mandalorian 1 and 2, amazing. Every single episode, we had to pace ourselves and not marathon watch them, binge watch them, because I wanted to really enjoy them. And then they fired a really great actor that was playing a great character. Now they had to change everything. So that's going to throw everything out. And so you got pettiness going on. And Hollywood's rife with that. Hollywood is rife. It's not just a
That's no excuse for
where
quality.
Somebody doesn't like a big producer doesn't, or even a little minor producer or executive somewhere
for another
goes off and says, I don't like you. I'm going to do whatever I can to get you out of here. And it's not the first time this has happened. So to say that it's possibly, Kathleen Kennedy, it might be for whatever reason, this is not new. And this is something that Hollywood just is part of the machine now.
I want to, first of all, we've been going for 2.5.
Okay. So another recess. Be right back. All right. Here we go.
Hours now, more than 30 minutes of open debate. I'm going to read. So we're gonna wrap up court for today. I'm going to read some super chats that people brought in. We have a lot of them. If anyone would like to drop off, feel free to exit. We'll do super chats, but we'll also continue debate in the middle of the super chats. Any comments from anyone? Any questions? Did you have a good time in court today?
If I may have 60 seconds, put me on a timer. I just have a few things I'd really like to say and be done with it.
I'll give you 55 seconds.
So Anna, great point about Wrath of Khan. Fifth Element's also a very good example. And I apologize to the jury for being all boring. I'm a teacher. I know what I'm boring people. I do pay attention to the meanings of words because words are the closest thing we have to magic. Preciseness of language matters. My point being that the anecdote I told earlier about the theater, fans got upset. They burned the theater down. I'm very glad we're not burning things down. We're having a nice conversation here. And I'm just hearing what you're saying. I feel you're coming from a place of hurt. You were very disappointed with the quality of these movies. They really dropped the ball. The charge is not, is Disney guilty of disappointing people? The charge is Disney guilty of committing fraud, which is a conscious and malicious act. So, members of the jury, you really think they sat around like, oh, yeah, we're really going to screw these fans over? Or did they drop the ball? Thank you.
I would just like to point out again, it's not fraud. Fraud and fraudulent misrepresentation are two very different. They are similar, but they are very different things. And like you said, words are the closest thing we have to magic. So it is important to distinguish that. Also, what kind of teacher are you?
Presently, I'm special education, but I've taught everything from grade 4 to undergraduate university in 6 countries.
Like what subjects? I'm sorry.
Oh, history, English, sociology, creative writing. And again, what I've been doing lately is working with severely handicapped children. It's called the Autism Spectrum Disorder County class in Ontario.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we're close by.
I respect.
I'm in SoCal too.
I just want to say also, I only suggested that we wrap things up. If you would like to continue, we have so many chat comments and questions. I don't want to ignore the chat. We have been putting up some of the comments, but not reading them during this. But I want to be respectful of people's time.
I'll also say that it wasn't The Force Awakens that made fans want to burn the theater down. I mean, we're basically talking about this. I believe it's right after Kenobi came out, and that was the feeling we had that Disney had finally had, that was kind of the last straw, and that's when I feel like we seriously started thinking about burning the theater down, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But this has been over time, and we're just with this particular point stating that the foundation of where Disney has brought Star Wars to today started from the purchase of Star Wars and Lucasfilm, and that's where it all began.
It kind of feels like, wait a second, this lesbian bar doesn't have a fire exit. Like, how long do we need to sit here and look around before we realize what's going on? And it does get to a point where should one recognize fraudulent misrepresentation? Is it something that you should notice, like that car analogy we heard earlier? You drive it, the wheels fall off. Yeah, you know what? I think there's some fraudulent misrepresentation going on here. Or is it something that we can only understand from years of taking it in and having? But either way,
I mean, I'll speak to that. Let me speak to that real quick. I think the general feeling when The Force Awakens came out was that it was a great movie and that Star Wars is finally back. And what you do see is that over the weeks and months, that feeling started to sour a bit. And that the same thing happened when The Last Jedi came out. There was a lot of fans. I was a big fan of The Last Jedi. But half of the people weren't. We had the Last Jedi debate. And with The Rise of Skywalker, you just started seeing this downward progression. And I think that's what we're really addressing overall here.
Well, I would, if I may, I would argue that because I know a lot of people in the chat, and I know, I forget if it was either you, Alan, or Anna said a little bit about Solo, is that yes, Solo was considered the first Star Wars flop. However, Rise of Skywalker, love it or hate it,
Last
it
Jedi
still
was
made over $1 billion.
That led to Solo.
So it's not if logic, if we're going by the same argument that, you know, because of the Last Jedi was killing the fan base, and that, you know, and that they immediately were losing money because of Solo, then why didn't the Rise of Skywalker make less than $1 billion?
Promises Disney and Kathy.
Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Lando. Also, based on how much a movie makes doesn't mean it's good.
That's according to
terrible movies that make a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true. But in Hollywood, from the business standpoint of Hollywood corporations, that is exactly how they can tell when something is a hit or that is something is considered quality or not, is how much money it makes. And if
let me
going
just
by,
say this. I'm looking at the numbers here, domestic. So I don't have the global numbers right now, but domestic, Star Wars, The Force Awakens made over $1 billion domestic. Rise of Skywalker did the worst of, it did slightly better than Attack of the Clones at just over $500 million. And again, I'm talking domestic here.
Yeah.
And so you do see a massive drop off when it comes to where it started with The Force Awakens and to where it ultimately happened. Half of the box office disappeared at that point.
Real quick, the chat is asking for Mahler. Mahler will be in a future episode.
You were giving me hell for taking too long. How are you going to manage Mahler?
What?
Can you keep him?
That's okay.
Do we need
No,
a special time limit for him?
Look, I want there to be some structure to the debate, but that doesn't mean that people can go slightly off, you know, and debate as you would in real life while you're waiting in line at a convention. I also want to say thank you to Dr. Gordo. I have a stepbrother who has Down syndrome, so thank you for working with kids with special needs. That's very admirable. I'm going to read some super chats, and we'll continue this. We will continue. You know, the audience seems to be enjoying what we're doing, and we will continue. But we've just had a lot of comments from people, and I want to make sure to get them in. I want the audience to know, the jury to know that you are being heard. So thank you very much. I'll go through these. Cardinal Thin for $9.99. Hey, Chris and Alan, sup to the chat and the mods. Thank you very much. 200 Watt Studio for 2. To the teacher, thank you for teaching special needs. Caligulove for 11 says, Mr. Frank Gore, I missed episode 1. This is a great idea, and it was fun to be in the audience. Hail and cheers to both sides. Anna, you were fire.
Yeah.
J Bama fan, CG Meat Machine for 2. Haven't watched a thing since Gina was fired. Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like God would be taller than George Lucas, says Russell Hall for 2.
You got to remember back then people were short.
David March for 550 says, can I just say, having watched the prequels, I am thankful that George didn't make his third trilogy. Without Kurtz, he would have screwed them up too.
Without Marche too.
Yeah. Jake Skywalker Jake Skywalker for 199. George is the only reason we are still here. Scott McKenzie for 2. They lost more than half the audience. Sean Hu for 1429. The argument should be, was it reasonable for fans to expect the legacy characters to be presented properly based on the promotional materials, and were they presented that way? I would have, if I were on the prosecution, I'm not saying what the prosecution should do. There's a very good show recently that honored legacy characters, brought in new characters, told a story, was honorable even to a starship, and that is Star Trek Picard Season 3. That's all I'm going to say.
It's fantastic. You should watch it.
If I were on the prosecution, I would have brought that up. Mr. Ing, Ms. Anna.
I was given a time limit. I had to cut down a lot.
Okay, well,
I'm going to notice how long you give Mahler, though.
That was, Your Honor. Your Honor.
Yeah. Yes.
That was, we were going over that very issue last night, and then technical things happened, and then we got caught up in the emotional dealing with everything else, addressing stuff that came up at us. So we dropped the ball there.
That's, you know what? It's fine. The jury will ultimately decide in the coming weeks. Let me get through these chat. Nerdgenics for $4.99 says, loving critics court. Let them debate their arguments through definitions, comma, evidence, one by one. I'll say this. This is a made-up show that's never been done like this on YouTube. We are kind of making this up. I mean, I just want to see people who disagree debate respectfully. It's something you don't see on Twitter. It's something you rarely see on YouTube. I want people who disagree to debate and be respectful towards each other. Now, it doesn't mean it can't be fun. You can't, some playful ribbing. Playful ribbing is fine. But I don't want...
Also, this is not a real courtroom, and we're not real lawyers. And I think this is as close to LA law as we're going to get. So
that's not even a real tie. Alan is wearing one of those. That's like a filter, like on InstaChat or whatever the kids are using. Anyways,
I think you want LA law. You'll have like crackheads and hobos and stuff. I don't think you want that here.
Thank you, Nerdgenics. These aren't even real glasses. These are like those blue blocker glasses when you look at a screen too long, which I think I need now. So there you go. Thank you, Nerdgenics. Appreciate that. Loud Bob. I've talked to Nerdgenics, I believe, on Twitter. So thank you. Always enjoy the conversation. Loud Bob for five UK, pounds. People can like what they like, but you can't argue with diminishing returns. Patrick Lemire for 2. Galaxy's Edge is where you go to beat Disney crowd. Angry Yeti TV for 5. Iger and Kathleen Kennedy are both on record stating that there is no source material for Star Wars. I would classify that as fraudulent misrepresentation.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that happened when Bob Iger was buying the company. And I mean, I would highly recommend, if you guys haven't read this, to go and read it. It is very eye-opening on why
give Bob Iger more of your money.
Well, I would, yeah. Oh no, I'll buy a used copy or get it at the library. But it's like, it would have been nice to know before the case, and I would have read it to like prepare myself.
Well, I mean, truthfully, it was, I think, Sunday night or Monday morning. I invited everybody, and you really only had a couple days. But I'll tell you this.
You invited me like 3 days ago.
Yeah. Look, throw me in the middle of a debate where I know a lot about something. I don't need to prep at all, which I did not for today. All right, 200 watt studio for 20. Father Dave is disingenuous. He is well aware the prequels were advertised as prequels. Disney sequels made a point that the original cast would be in it. Father Dave is gaslighting and omitting relevant context to build a straw man. That's a little harsh, but I'm just reading the comment. Skotsky 02 for 50. 50. I'm a Beardo fan. If there is still an opening, I would like to represent the prosecution regarding the misuse of Star Trek canon. If it is already taken, I would like to present evidence to the court on Disney's terrible handling on the warfare side of Star Wars. I'll say this. I am currently inundated with people who want to be a part of this trial. What I'd like to do is, for the most part, use people who are already on YouTube, who are just familiar with formats and know how YouTube works. We do have if you become a member of the channel, you'll have access to our Discord. I would like to offer Discord access to everyone currently on the live stream right now. But if you join, Alan, if you could create those forums and then also share on our community tab, the Discord, it's very cheap to join, and that way you have access.
We have one for Critics Court already, and I'll get 2 private ones set up.
We're going to set up private for prosecution and defense. You can speak amongst each other. Everyone here, you'll have access to that. I just can't manage those conversations. I have never, in all the things we've done on YouTube, I've never gotten this kind of reaction to anything we've done, which I think is great. And I And I think it's great that we can disagree and coexist.
Yep.
Because when The Last Jedi came out, I saw something that I thought, I'm be really honest here and tell you that I saw something I thought was very distressing, which was people being angry at other people because they either liked or disliked a Star Wars film. Now, it's fine to dislike it, and it's fine to like it. But what I saw crossed the line against YouTubers that I happen to like, against people even in real life getting so worked up over it. Obviously, Star Wars means a lot to all of us, and I want us to be able to talk it through. And you know what? Sometimes it can be fun, and we can walk away and continue to disagree. I love that you can still hear the coughing in the background, and the little echo sound, the looping sound of the courtroom. There's something soothing about it. But thank you, Scottsy02, for very generous 50. Thank you for that. You were going to say.
Yes, I was going to say, just to kind of add on to your comment, because I noticed a lot of some of the highlighted marks that were basically that, like, the defense were a bunch of shills, we weren't real Star Wars fans, etc. And if I may say, that's nothing further from the truth. We are presenting a case. We're presenting a case, nothing more. Everyone deserves a defense, even Star Wars. And
even Kathleen Kennedy.
Even Kathleen Kennedy deserves a defense. And I know at least Gordo and myself, we submitted audition tapes where we talked about how much of a fan we were for Star Wars. And if we weren't real fans, we would not be here. I can guarantee that. So
we were showing each other Star Wars memorabilia.
Exactly.
To express how Star Wars, what it means to me, I would need that Star Wars girl amount of time to give it, to do it justice.
And that's just a segment, right?
Oh, yeah, then that'd just be chapter 1. So, but I didn't feel my job here today was to either say good things or bad things about Disney Star Wars. Just simply, this charge 1 does not fit. Just because you were disappointed by the film does not mean you are the victim of fraudulent misrepresentation. Done. There's other charges here to discuss. When it comes to charge 1, members of the jury, search your feelings. Hands down. Do you honestly feel you are a victim? Or are you just disappointed?
By the way, I get called a shill all the time in the chat.
Yeah,
I can confirm that from Alan. By the way, in the private chat is a link to the Discord. If you're a member of the channel, you'll have access to the private chat. If you would like to be added to either the prosecution or defense private channels on the Film Threat Discord, ask Alan, who is on the Discord. So, but there is an open debate on no, don't do that.
You're tired of those? You're tired of that?
I have now been inundated. If you send me an email about Critics Court now, I am more than likely not going to respond. Not because I'll say thank you, please join the Discord to engage in conversation, because I can't answer your giant long letters telling me I just don't have. And my apologies. It's just sheer numbers. And Film Threat is my day job. In addition to, I'm trying to finish the Blu-ray for Attack of the Doc. It has to be finished on Friday.
Ouch. So
just so people know, we still have about 25 super chats here. I'm going to go through them all. You're welcome to drop off or continue debate here. Let's go on. Retribution 0 for 5 says, thank you to all your efforts. It's all fun. Old school fans love debates. Even if I don't agree, it's all good because we all care. 200 Watt Studio for 5. Father Dave, I didn't intend to be harsh. Much respect, sir. This is one of the things I do have to thank the chat for, because I've been on chats on other channels. It can get wild. Have you ever watched a show called Flashcast? It can get wild in the chat, and that's fine. You know what? I'm not offended by that kind of stuff. It's okay. What I'm really impressed by in the Film Threat chat, people being able to debate these things, and I do appreciate it. And you're welcome to your opinion whether it agrees with mine or disagrees. Diversity of opinion is my favorite kind of diversity. So there you go. See, there you go, Father Dave. Loud Bob for £5. Lucasfilm, you're breaking my heart. You're going down a path I can't follow. It's probably better if Anna reads that one.
Oh God, I'm not good at that.
You can do it.
I'm not an actress.
But like, but you can just do a Natalie Portman imitation.
A bad cry.
Do it.
I can't do it now. I'm too nervous. I'm not good at that stuff.
Come on, Anna, I believe in you.
Come on, you can do it.
No.
Oh.
Have anyone else do it. I don't do the acting stuff.
All right. It says, Lucasfilm, you're breaking my heart. You're going down a path I can't follow. So there you go. Super Chair Destroyer for 10. 1, Star Wars is George Lucas and what he studied. 2, they didn't listen to Lucas or Mark Hamill and not willing to change the story based on what they said. William Quinones for 2. Anna is the She-Hulk we should have gotten. Oh, and George the Giant Slayer.
Oh, hey.
George gifted 10 Film Threat memberships. That means that the 10 people were in the chat. Thank you, George, for that. Those 10 people now have access to the Discord. Go to the community tab on Film Threat. The Discord link is there. Thank you, George. It was great to see you in Vegas. Great to hang out. Force ain't female, bruh, says Jorge Barracuda for 2. Russell Hall for 2. They decanonized most of the extended universe. Yeah. Ian Frushi for 2. What about misrepresentation of Luke, Han, and Leia? There you are. Yeah. Caligulov for $5.50. Father, all the games and novels that Disney said are irrelevant. Nice, Anna, says William Quinones for 2. 200-watt studio for 2. Damn, Anna is rocking tonight. Nice work, Anna.
Thank you.
Can I speak to that one comment?
Please.
I still play those games.
Yeah. There you go.
Those games are still alive. My headcanon that I make when I role play Star Wars by West End Games, still in my head. It's still Star Wars. Doesn't matter what Disney does. I'm still going to be a Star Wars fan of Star Wars that I participate in.
Mr. Ing has to leave in about 5 minutes. That's fine. I just want to get through all the chat comments and questions because there are about 20. So I will get to them all, but everyone else is welcome to court is officially,
recess.
Court is officially ended for today. We will be back a week from today for Critics Court. We will be arguing charge number 2. It will be there'll be new people. I assume we'll have a few people from this week, but I'd like to be able to rotate in a group of people as well to continue and mix up the conversation. But a week from today, we will be back. My promise to you that we're going to go through all 9 charges. It looks like we'll probably wrap up the case right before San Diego Comic-Con in July. So this is going to be a long one. This could be longer than Amber Heard and Johnny Depp.
Can I one little thing?
Yes, Mr. Korn.
I just would like to plug my radio show.
Yes, please. Yes. Okay. Yeah. When you drop off, please plug your show.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah. I do a show called Seeds of Cinema where we play music from movies and talk about the movies we saw the past week. My roommate and I, and it's online, outnorthradio.com every Sunday at 2 p.m. Alaska time. So we're 1 hour behind Pacific time. We have our own time zone.
Wait a sec. Are you in Alaska?
Yeah, I'm in Anchorage.
Oh my God. That's awesome. That's
the snow's
great.
melted finally.
Yeah, whenever I travel outside of the Los Angeles area, I'm always impressed at how great the air smells.
When I go down to California, I have to go visit I'm going down to my father's funeral in June, and
I'm sorry.
I love my dad, but he wasn't Joan Crawford or Daddy Dearest, but he wasn't the world's greatest dad either. So, but when every time I go down, get off the plane and go, what the hell is all this?
Well, you know who also had a father that maybe wasn't the greatest? Luke Skywalker. There you
But he
go.
turned out to be okay at the end.
He'll cut
All
off
he had to do was pull his helmet off and boom.
He'll murder thousands of people and cut off his son's hand. So at least your dad didn't do that.
Cut off your hand as
But
far as
he
we know.
cut his father's hand back off in return.
Yeah, that's true.
Fake
Yeah,
hand.
there you go.
Did,
It
did
was
he
just
blow
turn
up
about
a
his fair
planet?
play there. You're saying? See
But
how
he didn't know it
good
at
I
the
am?
time. All right, back to these super chats, and Mr. Ing, you need to leave.
Yeah.
Would you like to plug anything? We're going to be back on Friday to do normal Film Threat livecast. We'll be reviewing movies on Friday.
Yeah, no, filmthreat.com. Lots of reviews going up, and yeah, Friday at 9 o'clock a.m.
Great, Mr. Ing, thank you for your service in court. Like I say, before the end of this trial, you may earn a Red Lobster gift card, so that you can go to Red Lobster where they serve fish and you can eat the bread, which is the best thing they have at Red Lobster.
I live in Alaska. We don't
Yeah.
have any up here.
Well, maybe that's a
Red
good.
Lobster or
Like, we want to go down to
There's that
California.
fresh fish is what you have in Alaska.
We already have it here. It's just right down the. We gotta go to Ship Creek and get some.
There you go. All right,
Does
Mr.
the
Ing.
bread have fish in it?
Thanks a lot.
Mr. Ing, thank you for your service today. I'll see you on Friday, my colleague. I appreciate it. My friend and colleague, Mr. Ing.
Love you too.
Okay. All right. Take care, Alan.
Like kisses.
Love you too.
Okay, see ya. All right, continuing on. Russell Hall says, no means no, Chris. If Anna says she doesn't want to do something, you should respect that and never ask her again. Have some manners.
Oh my God. He's trolling. He asked me the same question for 3 years and he finally got an answer last night.
Okay, well, there you go. Caligula for 550. Father, all the games and novels that Disney said are irrelevant. People are upset about this. William Quinones for 2 says, nice, Anna. Noah Sprague Studios for 10. To follow up with my last super, yes, Disney did not say we would get a reunion, but they also did not say that we would not get a reunion. All right, very interesting argument. Solo lost money. That is all, says huge ass for 220. Patrick T for $4.99 says Star Wars is George Lucas's story. Star Wars is about the Skywalker family. The sequel trilogy should have been about the grandchildren of Anakin, not Rey. Nobody. Nate's memes for 2. That was tough love. Vader ain't gonna take no lip. And John Orchard says for 10, Disney does not have to make explicit statements. Actions belie intent. Interesting. Can you tell Willie nobody called Saul? Says Special Ray for $199. Dr. Certifiable for 5. Disney, quote, hey, we have all these tested and fan beloved materials to use to make movies with. Nah, close quote. Nerdgenics for $4.99. I want the gloves to come off in this trial. Debate the argument that modern ideology is what drove the decisions that got us here in the first place. Well, Nerdgenics, I will say things are going to get heated in the coming weeks. There's someone who's coming on in week 3 on the defense that will blow people's minds.
Really?
I cannot wait. And I'm going to keep it a secret. Russell Hall for 5. The main point of fraud on Disney's part is that they promised a coherent film which fans and general audiences alike could watch and enjoy. And he goes on to say, May 10th is Victory Day for Russell Hall. Thank you, Russell. Jorge Barracuda for 5. Not gonna lie, this trial is way more legit than the sham trials of a humble real estate agent in New York City. Hail Frank Gore and panel 199 in the house. Humble real estate agent. Oh, I know who you're talking about. John Orchard for 20. Fraud in the inducement. Made promises about who might be in the film. One is equal to showing you pictures on a social media photo, and it did not happen. J Bama fan CG Meat Machine for 2. How does it feel to have been outmanned by Anna? Gentlemen?
I don't think I outmanned anyone.
I was trying my best. I know. yeah. Well, my girlfriend has mine. I didn't get outmanned. I mean, there was a few times it was kind of like, yeah, can I finish my statement? But it was fine.
No, Anna, you did a good job.
Yeah, I know. You brought in.
I think every man is used to dealing with a woman.
I have 3 sisters.
I think that's why no one here is angry, because we were all adults.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Anna kept my pants on.
Good show, Chris, says William Quinones for 5. Zeus Play for 3. Objection, lol. And Noah Sprague Studios for 10. As someone who remained spoiler-free for the sequels, can agree that technically we were not promised a reunion, but a good trailer never spoils the plot, and so we let our imaginations fill the gap. And then I have some chats from our members here. I just want to say one of the benefits of membership, you get to see some of our private member streams, which is Alan usually live streaming video games. We saw a stream where Alan painted his pink room to bone white, which I thought was great. And then also you'll have access to our Discord. Once you get access, you're in to our Discord. So please, we encourage you to all become members. Thoughts on Fitness with Nigel, Threat Level 1, has been a member for 5 months and says, I just want my favorite farm boy back.
Chris, can I give you a recommendation that might boost memberships? Maybe after the show where you do the trial, do a members only stream where you can invite members on and they can give you feedback on how they thought the trial went.
Excellent. We will do that next week.
And then you could also do it with, if anyone from the trial wants to be on that to participate. And so what you usually do, what a lot of people do, is they post it public for like an hour, then they private it to where only members can watch it and only members can come on and participate. I think you would get a really big spike in memberships.
All right. So starting next week, we're going to do that. Alan and I will do that. And thank you for the suggestion, Anna. Anna, by the way, her channel, phenomenal channel. She is unafraid. She gets into scrapes with people on social media. I love it. I love it when you fight. Let's look at Mr. Blackwood is continuing to draw here. What do we have, Mr. Blackwood?
Lower
We have, it looks like Han Solo. I'm going to guess by the pose.
Move your eyes down so we can see it.
Yeah. Bring the screen down a little bit. Wait, who's
Towards
that?
your chest.
It's George.
George, look at that. George. Different George. George.
It was kind of Elvis because he was swiveling his hips.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's great. You've got, I see Christian Toto in there. There you go. Look at that. That's awesome. Satan West for 5. Great show. Love hearing both sides of the debate, even if I don't agree with one side. Shout out to all the guests. And Brad Best, Threat Level 2, has been a member for 2 months, says, prosecution looking fine. Well, there you are. Scott McKenzie, Threat Level 1, has been a member for 6 months, says, is Jeff 3PO going to be subpoenaed for this case? I have reached out to Jeff 3PO, so we shall see. Last week's missed super chat for Matthew Hammond, $4.99, says, is it too late to paint yourself gold? Oh, I paint yourself gold for the FNT.
You read the last 3 ones already.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry about that. Let me unstar those. There you go. And I want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to everyone watching. We will return next week, Critics Court. We will be debating charge number 2. Links are in the description, not just to the charges, all 9 charges, but to the evidence. Links to, they're all Google Docs. We're all making them open. Mr. Self-Destruct for 2, the honorable, stunning, and brave Frank Gore. Well, thank you for that. So we'll return next week. Sean Hu for $14.29. Are the box office numbers presented adjusted for inflation or not? We will get to that. This is an ongoing case. What I would like by the end of this case is to have so much evidence where we have our evidence documents for both sides. We've got our complaint, which we will amend and tweak so that it's much more serious. That this is something that could be taken seriously. The fans are speaking, and the fans are speaking amongst each other. So there you go. So join us on Friday for the normal Film Threat livecast, and join us every Wednesday for the next several months for Critics Court. Before we leave, who would like to plug their channels or what they're up to before we end the stream? Starting with Mr. Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood?
Is my mic on?
Yes, it is. We can hear you.
Oh, geez. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Todd Blackwood.
Awesome.
And Blackwood Project. Sorry, I
Right.
can't screen too well because it's pointed at my iPad. So
there you go.
Yeah, and I'll try
Awesome.
to post these drawings that I've been doing.
That's great. Could you make sure that you use the hashtag so we can all look for it? Use the hashtag Star Wars on Trial or Film Threat Critics Court. Add that hashtag. That's great. All right. Sorry I missed this one. We'll catch up for the next episode. Thank you, your Muslim uncle. You're definitely, we're keeping the streams up. Father Dave.
Christ is risen from the dead. By death, he's trampled down death, and to those in the tombs, he's given life. Thanks for having me. This was fun. I do a blog called Blood of Procopius if you're interested in role-playing games, especially the old school ones. This is fun. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Korn, Mr. Korn, we did get your but plug again your radio show.
Thank you. It is called Seeds of Cinema. We talk about movies. It's every Sunday, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And you can listen to it streaming outnorthradio.com. And it's 2 p.m. Alaska time.
That's great. Thank you. Dr. Gordo.
Well, as you can probably tell, this is my first time ever on a live stream YouTube. So I really appreciate this opportunity. I have absolutely nothing to plug, but I'm hoping we can do this again.
Well, thank you for your service, sir. We appreciate it. So I just thank you from me personally. Thank you for that. And now, Mr. Willie.
Hi, I have a couple of YouTube channels. One is Willie the Monkey King, and Willie the Monkey King, where I do have animated content, and I do some behind the scenes videos of the of an animated web series that I'm making. I also have Willie the Monkey King's music, where I put up music that I've created. And yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. And
thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you. And thank you for your service. Thank you to the entire defense. I don't care what the chat says. I think you all did great. I think a lot of people in the chat think that you did well. And Father Dave, on a personal note, I will just say that I think that redemption, forgiveness is something from religion that I think that I really enjoyed in the original Star Wars trilogy. And I think we could have used more of it maybe in the sequels. That's just my personal opinion. So there you go. 200 Watt Studio for two wonderful panel tonight. Anna, if you might please plug your channel and what you're up to coming up.
Hi, everyone. I'm That Star Wars Girl. For those that don't know me, I am on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Facebook. I think that's all the socials. If you just look up That Star Wars Girl, you will find me. But I just like to say, everyone, I know not everyone does this every single day, but I think you guys did a good job. And I'm sorry if I was a little bit argumentative. That's just my personality. It is nothing personal. I think you guys did a great job, and it was really fun debating with you guys. I would get shit from people my whole life. So it's nice to actually be able to discuss this with people that have, the same love and knowledge level as I do. So I really appreciate it. And I did have a lot of fun, and I would love to do this again sometime with all of you. You guys are all great. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Awesome. And thank you to the audience. We'll be back next week. I appreciate it. The chat, you are part of this. I want to remind you, the chat, you are the jury. You are the jury in this. So you will ultimately decide how this all ends. Thank you for that. And we will end with our intro because we don't necessarily have an outro yet. We're working on that. I want to also thank Glenn Brown, our producer, who put together all these videos, did the prep. He's done an amazing job. Glenn Brown, just fantastic. I got so many compliments on the videos. Thank you for that. And Ms. Pico Coffee in the chat, keeping it real. and making things so much easier for us on the live stream. And I'll just say, we'll see you next week. Your attendance is mandatory for Critics Court.
A standard TIE fighter. Not even an interceptor or a TIE bomber. One of the common aircraft in the Empire. Yeah, that.
Be fearless. Change is good.
The Wilhelm scream.
I don't really care if I sleep too much. It's kind of.
All right. And that can. Oh, shoot. Count one fraudulent misrepresentation. Hold on a minute. What? So we just finished that one. The next one in line is Star Wars has been consistently been losing fans since The Force Awakens. Yet this one, oh, okay. Oh, I guess they do like a recap of the ones that they covered. All right, so that concludes this episode. It's really late right now. It's well, not really late, but it's 1:24 my time, and I'm tired. Spent a lot of hours driving today, and I also have an early morning tomorrow, so I'm going to try and squeeze in a few hours of sleep if possible, and hopefully get up in time. But I wanted to thank you all for joining me. I'm going to end this stream, and then I might do another episode of this, cover the third part of the episode next stream. Let me see. 1, 2, 3. Actually, I might be able to squeeze in like 3 of them on the next one. Oh my gosh. And it returns on the 6th episode, it looks like. But let me see. 4, 57, 569. I don't know. Maybe I'll put 2 streams in the next one and then combine the 2 after that. Some of these, wait, what? Are some of these just little clips? Because some of them are as short as 17 minutes, 17 to 20 minutes. I don't know. I'll figure out something. But I might, what I'm trying to say is I might basically consolidate 2 or 3 into a single stream. So thanks again for joining me. I'll try and do another one. Well, technically it's later on Sunday, which is today. But I've got some other stuff going on right now. I mean, got some stuff going on later this morning. All right. Thanks again. Appreciate your support and have a good one. Bye.